following is a production of Cary TV, the Town of Cary's government access channel.
Call to order the January 28th meeting of the Cary Town Council. And at this time, I'll recognize Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Smith for our ceremonial opening.
Please join us all for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first order of business is to adopt the agenda. I would entertain a motion to do so.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're now at item 2.1, which is the operational update. And at this time, I'll recognize Carl Knapp for the update. Mr. Knapp.
Good evening, Council. Tonight, we're giving you a latest revenue update. These figures are based on our revenues through December. At this point, we are projecting a 1.3% surplus in our general fund revenues for this year, equal to about $1.8 million. This is made up of several elements, one of which we're going to talk about a little bit more extensively. Generally, our sales taxes are running well ahead of estimates. We don't think that this pace is going to be sustained for the entire year, but it should produce a surplus. At this point, we're looking at about $1.1 million. Property taxes are also ahead of schedule, about 1%. Most of our other revenue sources are just a little bit above their projected levels. The one exception that you see here at the bottom of this chart is in our permits and fees. These include building permits and other types of development-related permits that we have. These are below the level that we projected for this year. We had projected coming into the year an increase of about 3.93% from our FY14 levels. This assumed both the 5% increase in permit fees that was included in the budget, but also that there would be some slowdown in the level of growth. We had gotten ahead of the rest of the state on development coming out of the recession. Our construction was ahead of where everyone else was. There certainly was some expectation that we would level off a little bit at some point as the rest of the state started to catch up with us, and some of the development that had been permitted was being constructed, and builders had to work that out. It is not quite as much as we thought this year, largely because over the past few years we have had a consistent level of non-residential and multifamily housing where we had a number of big projects each year, and that's sustained itself. This year, we haven't seen that. In particular, last year, we had the MetLife project in its final phases of permits in December and November of last fiscal year, and that was $250,000 worth of permit fees in those 2 months. We haven't seen that type of project again this year, and based on what's in the pipeline, are not looking necessarily to see that again. So we've adjusted our revenue estimates down to account for that. There's also slower levels of building permits for residential this year. This is not unique to Cary. It's fairly consistent throughout the county. I think reflects some of those market conditions that we talked about before, which is also within Cary, we're seeing a little bit of a shift in the types of permits that are being requested for single-family housing from single-family detached towards single-family or to non-detached townhomes in general. Those types of houses are not generally as large, and since our fees are based on square footage, they don't produce as much revenue. They also tend not to have accessory buildings, which are separate fee revenues. So we don't see quite as much revenue per permit as we would from detached housing. And finally, our watershed maintenance fees, which are incurred when a development moves from the construction phase to the completed phase and its stormwater protections move into that finalized phase. We are not seeing as much of this year because I think the last couple of years we had more developments completing, and again, this change in the market a little bit has reduced that. So we expect that we will continue to see growth throughout the year. It just won't be quite as much as we thought, but given our increases in other revenues, it's not going to affect the overall budget. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for Mr. Knapp? Thank you, Mr. Knapp.
Thank you, Mayor.
We now move to Public Speaks Out. We've included instructions for speaking at Public Speaks Out on your printed agenda. If you'd like to speak at Public Speaks Out, please take a seat in the rows to my right that are marked as reserved and follow the instructions on the agenda. Public Speaks Out speakers have 3 minutes for their comments, and they may speak on any topic as long as it is not a public hearing. There's a 3-minute time limit, and I will enforce that strictly, not to be rude, but to be fair. There's a timer on the podium. When the green light turns yellow, that means you have 30 seconds remaining. And when the yellow light turns to a flashing red light, that means your time is up, and I will interrupt you, and you need to conclude your comments immediately. We also ask that if you are speaking with a group or for a group, that we have one spokesperson for those groups, and do your best not to repeat comments that have already been made. I asked everyone in the audience to respect that this is a business meeting. Please do not applaud, make remarks from your seat, or anything else that might distract from us understanding, listening, and paying attention to our speakers. So now's the time for Public Speaks Out, and I would invite the first speaker forward to speak on any topic as long as it's not a public hearing. Anyone for Public Speaks Out?
I'd ask Mr. Shiver if I could come in and say a few words tonight. As most of you know from the news release that went out today, I'll be retiring Friday afternoon. And I wanted to stop in and say a few words about how wonderful the experience has been here. I've worked for the town a little over 25 years in the same position, but a lot of things have changed. I will tell you that I've worked with a number of elected officials over the years, and I truly believe that every elected official I've ever worked with has always had the best interest of Cary at heart. Regardless of politics or anything else, it's always been a pleasure to work with all of the folks that I've worked with over the years. One of the things I remember from many, many years ago, Mayor Coca Booth one night told me about getting several phone calls at 2 or 3 in the morning. And when he told me about it, I kind of stood back and thought for a moment and thought, you know, I get paid to be on call 24/7, and I don't get that many calls at 2 or 3 in the morning. So as a council, I want to express my appreciation for the opportunity As a citizen, it's important to me to look back over what's been accomplished in the town of Cary since I've been here. When I came here and took the job in Cary, Walnut Street was 2-lane. Crossroads did not exist. The Cary Town Center Mall had one Belk store and about 5 or 6 other stores. And I believe Cary Parkway was still on the paper, but not quite started yet. And Maynard Road wasn't complete yet. So that gives you an idea of how many things have changed. There were 400 town staff, and I believe the population was around 35,000, 36,000 people. So a lot of things have changed. A lot of things have changed with technology. I will tell you that one of the most pleasant experiences I've had in 25 years is to work for the 4 greatest bosses I've ever worked for. People have asked me if I plan to work after I leave Cary, and my comment is, if I was going to work, why would I leave? Because that's really how good this organization is, from top to bottom. Everybody who has worked for me, everybody I've worked with, and everybody I've worked for, including you, have been as good as it gets. And I just wanted you to know how much I appreciate it. I won't be going to the council retreat, but I will be thinking about you over there. But it's time, and I really have enjoyed working with you and with all the town staff. I think we've accomplished a lot. It was especially nice yesterday to have the Google announcement, along with the NC Engine AT&T project. I think we're really headed in a great direction for the town of Cary in the future, and I'm glad to have played a small part in that. So thank you so much. And I will still be a citizen. We are going to live here in Cary. No better place to live. So we will be around, and I will come back and see you from time to time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Stice. I know I met you the first time before I was elected, so it seemed like I've known you forever. So you'll be sorely missed, and we do hope you enjoy retirement. And I hope there's a goodbye party somewhere, so I don't have to sit up here and say goodbye. But
well, I will tell you that I'm leaving things in very good hands with my staff. So
okay, very good. Thank you for all you've done.
Thank you.
Speaker for Public Speaks Out. Next speaker, anyone? I see people moving. I don't see anybody moving this direction. So I'm going to close Public Speaks Out, and we'll move to the consent agenda portion of tonight's meeting. The consent agenda, for people that don't know, one vote approves all the items. And for the benefit of people watching on TV and in our audience, I'm going to take a moment to review the consent agenda items. And first, we have on the consent agenda minutes, then tax reports, then the following owner-initiated annexation petitions: 14A14, Stitt Properties LLC, Alma M. Stitt; 14A19, K. Hovanian at Indian Wells LLC; 14A23, Cary Creek Limited Partnership. The following ratifications of resolutions: Spring Arbor, Montvale Phase 1 and 2, Union Bank at Bradford, Crown at Cary Park Apartments. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We now move to public hearings. Same rules apply to public hearings that apply to Public Speaks Out, with one exception. Instead of 3 minutes, you now have 5 minutes to speak. Our first public hearing is item 5.1. It's the owner-initiated annexation 14A12, Young Family Timber Holdings LLC. Mr. Nicholas of our staff will present the item. We're going to open the public hearing, and council may take action this evening. Mr. Nicholas.
Thank you. Good evening, council. This request is for annexation of 34.6 acres of property located at 1346 Old Apex Road, approximately 300 feet north of the intersection of Old Apex Road and West Chatham Street. The property is in Cary's ETJ, and it's currently zoned transitional residential conditional use. The request is associated with a subdivision plan number 14 SB 21, which is a proposed development of 44 lots. This concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. This time I'll open up the public hearing and invite the first speaker forward. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and open it up to council members for questions or comments. I know I have a question. I'm just curious. What's the sliver above that? Do you know who that belongs to?
I believe there's another dwelling on that property. I'm not sure who owns that.
Ms. Grannon behind you is nodding yes, so.
The single-family detached house on that property.
Just curious. Other questions or comments or motion?
Make a motion to approve annexation 14A12.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. We now move to items 5.2 on our initiated annexation petition and item 5.3, rezoning for Weldon Ridge. We're going to hear both of these staff reports, allow the applicant to explain the request, conduct a public hearing, and council will not take action tonight. Instead, we're going to refer it to our citizen advisory board called the Planning and Zoning Board, and both items will come back to council at a future date for a future vote. Ms. Bierman will present this item. Ms. Bierman.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a public hearing on a request to annex and apply initial Town of Cary zoning to about 8 acres located at 1052, 1056, and 1100 Fersen Road. This is a vicinity map. You can see the property in yellow. It is at the end of Fersen Road, which connects to Marsville Parkway. The American Tobacco Trail is immediately west of the property. Here you can see East Farrell Road. There is not a road connection to East Farrell, as the American Tobacco Trail is in between. There is an associated annexation petition with this site, and here you can see the property in relation to the existing corporate limits. The subject property is shown in this, the star shown in red down in this area. This is zoomed out a bit to give a better view of the context. This is immediately south of the Weldon Ridge Planned Development District, and actually a small portion of the existing Weldon Ridge PDD is included in the subject property. This is a closer view, and you can see this strip that is in the existing PDD boundaries. The area to the north is in the subdivision process for the Montvale subdivision, so that is currently in review now and will be subdivided as a detached dwelling, single-family subdivision with lots that are about 20,000 square feet in this area. This shows the existing Weldon Ridge Planned Development District, the master land use plan. The area that's the subject of this request is being added at the southern tip, and the Montvale subdivision, which is a portion of that plan, is in this area just immediately adjacent to the north. The proposed zoning for the site is Planned Development District for the two parcels here to be added to the Planned Development District, and then also the Conservation Residential Overlay District, excuse me, would be applied, and the parcel would also be added to the Watershed Protection Overlay District. This shows the Weldon Ridge PDD master plan with the subject property added, and again, you can see that at the southern boundary. The proposed zoning conditions that are included as components of the new PDD master plan would include, for this portion of the plan, limiting the land use to 12 detached dwellings with a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet. This shows, again, as I mentioned, the Montvale site plan, which is adjacent to the property. With this, and you can see where there would be stubs connecting to this property. So when this property is developed, it would be connected to the adjoining property within the remainder of the Planned Development District. This shows the southwest area plan. This site is located within the VLCR, or the Very Low Density Conservation Residential Area. The density and minimum lot size that are included in the Planned Development District standards proposed for the property do comply with the regulations that are envisioned for this area. And this is just a closer view where you can see the boundary of the VLCR, the very low conservation residential area, compared with the low-density conservation area and the boundary of the overlay district that encompasses this area. There is a stream buffer on the site according to Cary's GIS maps. A field determination of this would be made at the time of the subdivision or site plan review. And there are no facilities on the Parks and Greenway plans that impact the site itself. You can see here where it is adjacent to the American Tobacco Trail. According to Cary's transportation plan, Fersen Road is a local street. It terminates at the property and then extends to connect to Morrisville Parkway. The portion of the adjacent subdivision to the east is the Copperfield or the Copperleaf Reserve. There is a portion of Fersen Road that has been improved and paved to provide access into that subdivision. The remainder of Fersen Road is not paved. At the time of the site plan review, according to the standards required by our ordinance, we would be looking at improvements along the frontage of the site consistent with the land development ordinance. The remainder of the area would need to be improved to provide the minimum standard to provide for a 2-lane paved road to continue all the way to Morrisville Parkway. The details of those requirements would be looked at the time of the site plan, but would likely be approximately 22 feet, which is a standard that we have for private streets. There are no existing or proposed transit lines in the vicinity. This shows a map with the properties that were notified of the public hearing. We did not receive any protest petition, nor did I receive any phone calls related to this particular request. And that concludes staff's comments. Will be available for question following the applicant's comments in the public hearing.
Very good. At this time, I would invite the applicant forward for their comments.
Mayor and members of council, my name is Glenda Topp with Glenda S. Topp and Associates, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the property owners. Staff did an excellent job going over the proposal. I'm going to probably repeat a few things, but I'd like to just go over very briefly the proposal. The request is to amend the Weldon Ridge PDD. We're asking for up to 12 dwelling units, single-family homes. The minimum lot size would be 15,000 square feet. On the map, the parcel is known as SF11, and the density would be a maximum of 1.5 dwelling units per acre. The site is approximately 7.93 acres, and a portion of it is already located in the Weldon Ridge PDD. The property is located in the southwest area plan, and it's designated very low conservation residential, and it does cap the density at 1.5 units per acre and a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet unless additional open space is provided. Within the PDD document, we have very clearly specified that we are going to comply with the standards in the Southwest Area Plan, the Conservation Overlay District, and the very low density residential standards. So even though the property is being brought into the PDD, as it pointed out in the staff report, other properties that have gone into Weldon Ridge have come in the same way and have agreed to comply with the standards of the overlay district. As staff pointed out, The development is adjacent to Copperleaf Glen, which is a part of Copperleaf, which is basically southeast of the property. And then Ms. Bierman showed a layout of Montville, which is to the north of the proposed rezoning. Both of these developments consist of large lots. What we are proposing is consistent with what is already in the area. Just want to add, and I know this is not a zoning condition, but with the lots being as large as they are, again, a minimum of 15,000 square feet, which we don't see a lot of in Cary, the expectation are for these home prices to start well above $600,000. Again, want to summarize that the request is in conformance with the Southwest Area Plan. It does provide a housing type that is compatible with what is already in the area. And we feel that the proposed density is appropriate for the area. And by meeting the standards of the Conservation Overlay District, it will allow for a lower intensity development, and the additional open space will provide protection to environmentally sensitive areas. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you for the opportunity to address council.
Thank you. Now's the time for the public hearing for items 5.2, 5.3 related to the annexation and rezoning of Weldon Ridge, and I would invite the first speaker forward. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and open it up to council members for questions or comments.
I just have a quick question with regards to Fersen Road. I haven't been on council since we've had a development going on to, is this a gravel road right now or just a private road?
Well, it's actually a public road, but it's beyond the point where it has been improved to go into Copperleaf. It's just a gravel road.
So if this is approved eventually north, on the north part of it, and you have the Copperleaf Reserve on the south part of it, whose responsibility is it to improve the road in between those two sections so people can actually use it?
Well, for the developer of this site, he would be required, the standard requirement would be for him to build the half-width section up for the property along the frontage. In this particular case, the full width that's required for this section would be 27 feet back-to-back within a 50-foot right-of-way. The right-of-way exists, so along the frontage of the property, the standard requirement for the ordinance would be to build half of the required width. However, an overriding standard would be to make sure that there's adequate access to be able to get from the site to a public road, which would be Marshall Parkway. And in this case, there would be a minimum standard that would be looked at the time of the site plan. But my understanding is that that would be approximately a 22-foot paved road that would meet the requirements to be able to provide the minimum access that would be required for access for fire vehicles and for two-way traffic.
So the applicant of this piece of Weldon Ridge would have to build or improve the road from Fersen, not only just in front of their location, but also all the way down to where the Copperleaf.
To be able to have the access that's needed for safety.
And is that just a fire safety, or is that built to town standards for a regular road?
I believe that that's a minimum standard, again, to provide for the two-way traffic. And there may be additional width and standards that would supplement that basic standard as other properties along the road develop, but there would need to be a minimum standard met to be able to get to the next public road.
Great, thank you for that.
Other questions? Okay, this will go to our Planning and Zoning Board for their review and recommendation, and we will see it at a later date. Thank you, Ms. Bierman. We now move to item 5.4, the Perch property rezoning request. We're going to hear from the staff, allow the applicant to speak to the request, conduct a public hearing, and we will not take action on this item. Instead, we will refer it to the Planning and Zoning Board. Ms. Graney.
Thank you. Good evening. For your consideration is a request to rezone approximately 73.5 acres located on Luder Shop Road. Subject property is shown here highlighted in yellow. There is an associated annexation petition which will be presented to you at a future meeting. The property is located in both Chatham County and in Wake County. The portion in Wake County is highlighted in green. It's part of the Southwest Area Plan and has a designation of very low-density residential, would be part of the Conservation Residential Very Low Density District. The portion of the property in Chatham County is part of the Cary Chatham County Joint Land Use Plan and has a designation of low-density residential. So the opportunity for densities in Chatham County would be up to 2 dwelling units per acre, and in Wake County, 1.5 dwelling units per acre. The existing zoning is R1 in Chatham County and R40 in Wake County. The applicant has proposed residential 40 conditional use. If zoned into Cary and annexed into Cary, the property would also be governed by the Jordan Lake Watershed Protection District, and the Conservation Residential Overlay District would apply to the portion of the property in Wake County. Conditions proposed by the applicant would be that the use be limited to detached residential and neighborhood recreation. Property owners within 800 feet of the subject property were notified by mail and the property was posted. There is a portion of the property that's being proposed. The overall property is approximately 100 acres. There's a piece of the property where a home and a barn is currently located that is not proposed to be part of this, but notification went out to the boundary of the entire area. We did have some phone calls from the community because this property is not in Cary's ETJ currently and does not have Cary zoning. It's not eligible for a protest petition, but we did hear from some adjacent property owners who were expressing concern, seeking consistency with existing residential development in terms of the proposed use and lot size. There was concern from one neighbor about preservation of streams and creeks in the area, and then concern from adjacent property owners about the location of roadway connections to adjacent development. The site is impacted by a stream according to Cary's most recent GIS maps, and field determination of such features will be required at the time of development plan review. Cary's Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan shows a greenway along the American Tobacco Trail in close proximity to the site. The property is located off of White Oak Church Road, which is proposed to be a future thoroughfare. And this concludes staff's presentation. Following the applicant's comments and the public hearing, will be available for your questions.
Very good, thank you. At this time, I'll invite the applicant forward for their comments.
Good evening again. My name is Glenda Topp with Glenda S. Topp and Associates, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the property owner. The proposed rezoning request is to rezone approximately 73.5 acres of property. Approximately 29 of the acres is located in Chatham County, and 44 acres are located in Wake County. And also, since the property is outside the town limits in Cary's planning jurisdiction, there is also an annexation petition that will need to be considered prior to consideration of the rezoning. The proposed rezoning classification is R40. As staff pointed out, in addition to asking for the R40, all the property, both in Chatham County and Wake County, will fall under the Jordan Lake Watershed Overlay District. In the Wake County portion, we're also requesting the Conservation Overlay District to apply again to the property located in Wake County. Staff also pointed out there's a portion of the property that is owned by the Purse family that is not being included in the rezoning, which is roughly 27 acres. On this property is located the historic home, barn, and the accessory structures. The property owner has chosen to keep this property himself and maintain those structures on the property. So the development that will be occurring around the existing home and structures. The proposed rezoning is governed by two land use plans. One is the Southwest Area Plan, which is for the portion located in Wake County, and then the portion of the property that's located in Chatham County falls under the joint Chatham-Cary Land Use Plan. The Southwest Area Plan designated the property as very low conservation residential, and this overlay district permits densities up to 1.5 units per acre, and also a maximum of 15,000 square foot lots unless additional open space is provided. The portion in Chatham County, the land use plan designation is 2 units per acre for the Chatham County side. Also, just want to note that in the Chatham County portion, there is not a minimum lot size attached to the plan, although it does talk about other things in terms of proper transitioning, but there is no minimum lot size in the Chatham County Cary joint plan. With this rezoning and bringing it into Cary for the first time, we are asking for the R40 zoning, and the minimum lot size with the R40 zoning is 40,000 square foot. If the zoning is approved by council under the Southwest Area Plan and the Conservation Overlay District, one is able to submit a development plan that does take advantage of the conservation overlay standards. Again, we would be following the very low density requirements. So again, the maximum density on this portion of the property would be 1.5 units per acre with a lot size of 15,000 unless additional open space is provided. In the Chatham County portion, the property again zoned R40, minimum 40,000 square feet. Since this is in Chatham County, we're not able to use the Conservation Overlay District, but in the R40 district, there is a provision for cluster development, which is not used very often because I don't think Cary sees that many R40 zoning districts coming in. I want to point out that under the cluster ordinance, under the R40 zoning district, the density is 1.09 units per acre, and the minimum lot size is 15,000 square foot, regardless if you provide additional open space. So again, I just want to point out in the Chatham County part, if you do use the cluster option, the density is 1.09, and the minimum lot size is 15,000 square feet. And it's also, for the record, I just want to note that any development plan that comes in, once a zoning is approved, does have to be approved by the town of Cary. We had a neighborhood meeting where we invited property owners within 800 feet of the proposed rezoning. And also want to note that we had talked to, and then yesterday we met with 2 of the property owners who live at the end of Old Thompson Creek Road, which showed up on one of the other, well, actually it shows up there to the west of the property where you can see there are 3 lots adjacent to our property that is at the end of Old Thompson Creek Road. We did meet with them yesterday, 2 of the property owners. They did go over their concerns and their issues. One thing that they wanted us to look at in particular was the buffer between our proposed development and theirs. The current LDO only requires, even though these lots are large, it doesn't distinguish between that. So the LDO only requires a 20-foot landscape strip or easement that can be part of the lot, so it's not a common buffer. So they want us to look at a buffer with which they talked to us about, and we told them that we would talk to the developer and come back to them with a proposed buffer. And we will do this prior to the Planning and Zoning Board meeting so that that information is before them, at their meeting. In summary, the proposed rezoning is consistent with the Southwest Area Plan and the Chatham County Cary Joint Plan. Do want to point out that by coming in under R40 the Chatham County portion, the density will be lower than what is allowed under the joint plan, and there will be a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet. We do believe that the proposed zoning and the lower density single-family detached homes is appropriate for this area, that it meets the intent and spirit of both the Southwest Area Plan and the joint Cary-Chatham County Plan. And again, if any of the cluster options are taken advantage of by providing the open space, it will help to protect any environmentally sensitive areas. This concludes my presentation. There are also other members of the team here tonight that can answer any questions. And again, thank you for the opportunity to address council.
Thank you, Ms. Top. Now is the time for the public hearing 14 REZ 32 Purse property, and I would invite the first speaker forward.
My name is Terry Heath, and I live at 919 Old Thompson Creek Road, which happens to be this piece of property right here, if that can be seen. I was notified yesterday that there's an ordinance that says two subdivisions that are side by side have to have 2 ways in and 2 ways out. And I was shown that the way out is going to be right here, connecting with Roy Mashburn and Galaxy Investments, which happens to run 10 feet from my back property line. I've got 4¼ acres. Our subdivision has 3 to 8 acre home sites. And we bought out there for privacy. And now there's going to be a connecting road that's going to connect how many ever houses and the traffic that can go out either White Oak Church, which happens to have a school proposed, and school traffic, which will mean most residents will leave the subdivision behind my house and out to Luter Shop, and they will do that anyways if they're traveling up and down Highway 751. I don't think that's what Chatham-Cary joint land use had in mind when they talked about transitioning from Chatham County to Cary, where subdivisions of my size now back up to subdivisions that have 2 homes per acre, like Roy Mashburn's subdivision, now named Woodhall, has. Traffic flow out my backyard by 10 feet with traffic moving, lights on it, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, that property had a buffer that was approved, and come to find out, a buffer really isn't a buffer. A buffer can have a road go across it, which was a shock to a layman like myself and the other homeowners that had negotiated to have a buffer to protect ourselves from that development that was going in there. Now we find out you can put a road across the buffer. Hence, no buffer any longer. So I object to what's going on here. I think what has been proposed is crazy for us Chatham County residents, and this plan to me does not work. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, council members. My name is Jonathan DeScenzo. I live at 918 Old Thompson Creek, and that would be this property right here. If council will forgive me, I've failed to provide slides this evening, computer problems. I've got a handout that if y'all wouldn't mind taking a look, I'd appreciate it. So a couple clauses that I noticed in the Res 32 petition that I'd like to draw council's attention to. The clause about stormwater management being a required portion of the of what will be looked at as guidelines for this rezoning, as well as there is also some specific language regarding the consistent transition of densities being achieved from higher densities near the Western Wake Freeway to the lower densities in Chatham County. That language is from the actual petition for this rezoning. So I'd like to point out that the subdivision directly to the west, my property, my neighbor Terry's property, and also the third property owner whom I have spoken with about these but could not be here because business calls him out of state. Those properties are all between 5 and 10 acres. The subdivision immediately to the southwest is also averaging 5 to 10 acres. A rezoning that puts a minimum lot size at the 15,000 square foot mark is not what I would think of as a transition, certainly not a uniform transition. Part of my concern being that the Wake County properties are allowed to be are actually larger lot sizes. And then moving into Chatham County, we're able to get smaller lot sizes on there. So that doesn't sound to me like a seamless transition as we move west out of Cary. So I provided for council on page 2 the Chatham County GIS map, and forgive me, it's black and white. I know it's a little bit difficult to look at. The soil there required that my house be built in the northeastern portion of the property of that 5 acres. As you can see on the printout here, there's quite a lot of slope that goes up behind that house. The top of the hill has a naturally occurring drain channel that runs down into the GIS shown stormwater runoffs. There are 2 that run through both or all 3 of the properties through there. I've included on the page immediately after some pictures of my house after what one might consider a light rain. There's quite a lot of water that collects at the base of that hill. The way that everything runs off and where my house has to be due to where the septic field is causes me to be right at the bottom of this hill. As we all know, water runs downhill, and I get it. So if there is any way to protect any of these streams, stormwater, runoff, and ensure that those things are preserved, that will help my property stay dry, which would be advantageous, obviously. So the very top of this hill has a runoff that runs down and into one of those stormwater drains, but it is not shown on this map. It's not shown on Chatham GIS, but that and several swales that we've put in on the property allow for drainage off the top of that hill. Because of the amount of water that accumulates and the drainage work that's been done, I'm very much interested in having adequate setbacks to ensure that that naturally occurring drain at the top of the hill is preserved. Right now, the property line runs right down that drain. So if we have a boundary that is only part of the lot and is not an opaque buffer of sorts that's untouchable, property can be developed all the way up into that specific drain that I'm concerned about that defers water down off the top of the hill. So that is of huge concern to myself and probably to several others that are located in the low area at the bottom of that hill. So we talked about the pictures. Those were a lot of fun. The Woodhall subdivision, I think, was interesting. The arrangement around the rezoning in the Woodhall subdivision arrived at a set buffer. Terry spoke about the value of the buffer, but there is indeed a set buffer there. We're hoping for something similar so that we can have some assurance that those streams won't be disturbed in that space. They were also able to settle on a minimum lot size that exceeded considerably the minimum lot size that's established internal to that specific space. We were hoping to see something similar, where we would be able to have a little bit more of a transition. So larger lot sizes means less impervious surface, means less water runoff, means that my house stays above water, hopefully a little bit more, a little bit longer, if you will. So the final page that I've prepared here,
Shinzo, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but your time is
I
expired.
see, okay. Well,
If
I'll
you
leave
have
the,
printed comments, you can leave them with the town clerk, or someone else can finish them for you.
okay,
But I'm
understood.
not allowed to let you go beyond 5 minutes.
That's fine, that's fair. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Anyone else at this public hearing? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Open it up to council members for questions or comments.
Yeah, I guess my first question would be, help me better understand the proposal. This is in the Southwest Area Plan, at least on Cary's side. You've got the joint Cary plan as a factor, but then there's the one I guess that concerns me is the conservation residential overlay, and how that could ultimately be a factor.
Conservation residential overlay would enable someone at the time of site plan to provide open space in specific design criteria that exceeded LDO standards, and then be able to do a smaller lot size. They could go down to a 15,000 square foot lot meeting R12 setbacks. The density would be the same, but the opportunity to do a smaller lots would be there, similar to a cluster style development. Same opportunity doesn't exist in Chatham County, but there would be the opportunity to look at a cluster development.
In the Chatham County side, could they also, were they also kind of limited to the same number of lots, or could they actually yield more if they brought in a plan that had?
They would, they'd still be constrained by the density limits, 2 dwelling units per acre by the joint land use plan. But the R40 density would still govern. So they'd still be governed by the R40 density.
Okay.
So they couldn't exceed R40's density. They could do a smaller lot, but they couldn't increase the density.
Okay, so they could end up bringing something forward that had smaller lot sizes but preserved a greater amount of open space.
Correct.
And depending on where they provided that open space, that could be a good thing for surrounding residents, or maybe not. Could also result in lot sizes that aren't exactly in harmony with adjacent neighborhoods, but then again, if it was surrounded by open space, you might not see it.
Right, and the open space would have to exceed any regulatory open space.
Okay. The first speaker talked about a road, and I mean, he was pointing on his screen, but what he was doing,
wanna
we
see
can't see.
Correct.
Show us where that road's going to go.
This is a site plan that's in review. So this has not been approved. This is the Mashburn property to the north. And what the preliminary, or what the proposed site plan and review shows, a road connecting to the south. This is Mr. Heath's property here at the end of Old Thompson Road.
Okay. So, but you said the site plan has not been approved.
It is in review.
It is in review. Has the road network pretty much been established, or is that subject to change?
At this point in time, I believe it's still in first review. Yes, it is subject to change.
Where ultimately is that road looking to go?
To stub to the property line. At
Yeah,
this
but-
point in time, we don't have a site plan for the Purse property because.
Understood, but it's either going to just feed another subdivision, or, but my question was, there was a road to the south that ultimately we were looking for it to get to.
Right, it's required to stub to adjacent vacant property or underdeveloped property.
I think what he's trying to ask is, where will this road plus future roads lead to, a major road?
I don't have that information
Okay.
yet. Yeah, we don't have a site plan for the Purse property yet.
Okay. I can appreciate the gentleman's concern on the road right at the back of his property.
It's close to his house, it looks like, too.
Yeah.
Based
Very
on that
close.
map, yeah.
So I'm not really sure how, would this site plan to the north here, would that come to council ultimately for approval?
If they are not meeting town standards, and if it has to be a quasi judicial public
It
hearing.
would.
So obviously, note of caution if that is the case about discussing it, because if it doesn't meet town standards and it does come to you for a quasi judicial public hearing, you'd have to make your decisions based on the evidence presented at that hearing.
So the site plan above the Mashburn property, that's in review right now?
That's in review right now.
And we're talking about staff review.
Right.
Just so
Correct.
everybody's clear what we're talking about.
So what is the opportunity to have discussions with the owner of this property to alleviate some of the potential harm for that resident?
Ms. Simpson, I'm correct in saying that it would be wise for them council not to engage in conversations with the,
On this point, I would agree.
No, I mean for the resident, for Mr. Heath, so that he can bring his concerns to staff as this is going through review.
he can certainly bring his concerns to staff, and has done so,
Okay.
which is why we have this slide here.
Okay.
Where, yes, he certainly can talk to staff, absolutely.
Okay.
And for those that don't have a clue what we're talking about here, if we review a site plan, we do it in a quasi-judicial matter, which means we cannot discuss it, cannot talk to anyone. We can only listen to it when it comes to us. And so therefore, we're being advised not to talk about this anymore because it could potentially come to us in a quasi-judicial matter, and then we may be excused and can't vote on it. So we need to stop discussing this, just to be clear. But what Ms. Bush's question was, there's got to be a way that concerns can be expressed to someone about this issue, and staff is the contact point. Would you be the contact point for this issue?
I am the contact point for the rezoning property with the Purse property. Michael Gratis on our staff will be the contact person for the site plan.
Okay.
Okay. Another comment that was made, I just wanted to mention that I kind of, liked the thinking behind it. We've actually seen that offered in some other projects throughout town, was that where new development butts up against existing large lot development, we oftentimes look fondly upon large lots being abutted up against other large lots. So you at least get something a little more like, kind, and quality and help provide a better transition. So I would kind of convey that to the applicant, that we're not looking for necessarily a one-size-fits-all lot size, that we would like to see some types of transitions in lot sizes that respect the character of the existing community they're looking to become neighbors with. I would definitely hope that the applicant could work with the property owners to on a buffer that's satisfactory. And I just got to say, I was a little shocked to see that when this came back, I mean, it was a long process for us to miss one parcel. I guess it's not so bad, but it's just kind of shocking that the Cary side was very low density and the Chatham side was low density. You just kind of almost thought that should have been flipped, but just my comments.
I have a question that is related to site plan, but I want a clarification. So this rezoning, as it moved forward, it would be up to the applicant if they wanted to propose that the roads they connect to go in a different direction. I'm trying not to talk about the property to the north, but if they want to take that property and run east-west rather than north-south, they can propose that.
They can propose zoning conditions pertaining to buffers.
Now, I'm not talking about rezoning
access,
conditions.
but-
I'm talking about after rezoning when it goes to site.
Well, when they go to site plan, this particular applicant,
Right,
for the Purse property,
right. Can they decide which directions the roads go, or is that predetermined in a comprehensive transportation plan?
there's no comprehensive transportation plan that impacts this property other than along White Oak Church Road.
Okay,
There is the connectivity ordinance, which is being evaluated right now. So the requirement to connect to the north, south, east, and west is still there. We'll see where that ordinance is at the time of the site plan review.
But hypothetically, not talking about specific parcels, any two developers could get together and talk about a road that might connect their two properties and
Privately,
maybe come
sure.
up with a better suggestion that maybe works in both their interests and surrounding property owners' best interests, right?
Absolutely.
Cool.
okay. Other questions, Mr. Smith, do you have anything else to add? Okay, for those that are new to this process, this is going to a citizen advisory board called the Planning and Zoning Board, and they're going to make a recommendation. The applicant did state that she will meet with residents between that time, and if changes are made to the proposal, There will be another public hearing where you'll have an opportunity to speak at the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, and they will make a recommendation to council, and we will make a final decision that is likely to be at least 2 months away. Am I correct, Ms. Grannon?
Correct.
Okay, very good. So if there are no other questions, we'll forward this on to the Planning and Zoning Board for their review. Thank you, Ms. Grant.
Thank you.
Item 5.5 is the Amberley PDD amendment request. We're going to hear once again from staff. We're going to allow the applicant to explain the request, conduct a public hearing, and we will not take action on this item tonight. Once again, we're going to refer it to the Planning and Zoning Board, and Ms. Grant is going to introduce this item again. Ms. Grant.
Thank you. This is a request to rezone a portion of the Amberley PDD located at 2374 Yates Store Road on 23.27 acres. Subject property is shown here, highlighted in yellow, south of O'Kelly Chapel Road at the intersection with Yates Store Road. Zoomed in aerial view shows a portion of the property cleared and portions of it still wooded. Cary's land use plan designation is mixed. The existing zoning is Planned Development District Major. And the property is part of the Amberley PDD. The area in question is circled here in yellow. The property that's the subject of the rezoning request is currently designated as a portion of the Amberley Town Center tract, which is approximately a 75-acre tract, which allows currently up to 240,000 square feet of commercial use, 125,000 square feet of office use, and 800 dwelling units. This red line shows you the boundaries of the existing Amberley Town Center tract, and then the area in yellow shows you the site that's the subject of this rezoning. So as you can see from this slide, a large portion of the Amberley Town Center tract has already been developed for residential. This aerial photo's a year old, and all of these lots have been subdivided. And then this is the UNC Wellness Center, which has been constructed. The applicant has proposed to rezone approximately 23.27 acres to allow up to 110,000 square feet for school use and uses associated with the school, and then to have a 5.15 acre tract that would be designated for up to 50,000 square feet of office and institutional use and/or commercial. And this is a summary of the two proposed tracts. Rather than being called town center, the applicant's proposing to have 18.12 acres designated as office and institutional 1. Again, the maximum of 110,000 square feet, 3-story building, maximum height. The use would be limited to school or associated school uses. And then the VC3 or Village Core Tract, 5.15 acres, maximum of 50,000 square feet, 5 stories, and a long list of opportunities: commercial, retail, office and institutional, school, other associated uses. This is just an overview of the Amberley PDD so that you can see a comparison of what's allowed today. So rather than the 240,000 square feet that was originally approved for commercial and the 125,000 square feet for office, to date, we've got 60,000 square feet for the wellness center with the opportunity for a 20,000 square foot expansion. And the proposed amendment would retain 50,000 square feet for commercial and/or office and institutional use. The proposal to have 110,000 square feet for a school. Residential with the overall Amberley tract was approved at 800 units. To date, there's 184 built. No new residential is proposed as part of this request before you tonight. Property owners within 800 feet of the subject property were notified by mail. The property was posted. Staff received 2 protest petitions, but they were outside that 100-foot boundary, and therefore it is not a valid protest. Concerns on the protest petitions and with calls that staff received pertain to traffic and the loss of potential commercial services if the retail opportunity changes to a school use. There's a stream buffer on the site according to Cary's most recent GIS maps, and field determination would be required at the time of site plan review. Future transit route located along Green Level Church Road. And the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan shows a network of greenway and street side trails in the general vicinity. O'Kelly Chapel Road and Yates Store Road are both designated as thoroughfares, and Hortons Creek to the south of the subject property as a major collector on the comprehensive transportation plan. There was a traffic study conducted that proposed the use of the elementary school and the 50,000 square feet of retail. There were multiple recommendations in the study. There's a link in the staff report to that rather lengthy study. There was not time to include a summary, so I'm going to take just a moment for the record to go over the fairly lengthy list of proposed mitigations that came from the traffic study. And then the applicant will speak to this. They are still evaluating whether or not they're planning on offering conditions, so that's something that they'll need to ponder and discuss with DOT, and hopefully we'll have some information before this goes to the Planning and Zoning Board. So traffic study recommendations looked at the intersection of O'Kelly Chapel Road and NC 55 and evaluated recommendations for eastbound turn lanes and signal modifications. Looked at O'Kelly Chapel Road and Alston Avenue and recommended providing a new signal when warrants are met. The intersection of O'Kelly Chapel Road and Green Level Church Road, turn lanes requested there, and signal modifications. At O'Kelly Chapel Road and Stonecroft Lane, again, a second eastbound through lane, new signal when warrants are met. O'Kelly Chapel Road and the retail access, this would be the 5.15 site, provide a right-in, right-out driveway configuration for that access point, an eastbound through lane on O'Kelly Chapel Road, an eastbound right turn lane on O'Kelly Chapel Road. And O'Kelly Chapel Road and Claystone Lane and the school access site, number 1, a number of conditions listed here. Directional crossovers, eastbound turn lanes, a second eastbound through lane, an eastbound right turn lane, and then mitigations pertaining to the site itself and site configuration. On O'Kelly Chapel Road and Yates Store Road, a new signal when warrants are met. Green Level Church Road and McCrimmon Parkway, a second southbound and northbound through lane with receiving lanes on Green Level Church Road. And then Green Level Church Road and Waycroft Avenue, 2 alternative proposals, second southbound and northbound through lanes, or a new signal when warrants are met. Green Level Church Road and Hortons Creek Road, again, 2 alternatives here, second southbound and northbound through lane, outside northbound through lane to drop as a right turn movement, or an alternative new signal when warrants are met. Finally, Green Level Church Road and Stonewater Glen Lane, new signal when warrants are met. McCrimmon Parkway and Cary Glen Boulevard, new signal when warrants are met. As you can see, lengthy traffic mitigations. Those will be summarized in the staff report as this moves forward. A lot of information to digest, but we wanted to make sure that you were aware of just how much was out there. This concludes staff's presentation. Following the applicant's comments and the public hearing, staff will be available for your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Grannon, and I'll invite the applicant forward. While the applicant is coming forward, I failed to mention one thing. Our council meetings are usually on Thursday, and when we hold them on a different night, that sometimes creates conflicts. Ms. Robinson wasn't late because she's just tardy. She's representing the town as a chair of a committee in the region, and we appreciate your service, and that's why she was late. So thank you for rushing from one meeting to the other. No problem. So please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Betty Parker, Senior Director of Real Estate Services with the Wake County Public School System. Thank you for the opportunity to be before you. I wondered if we'd find a school site. We've looked so hard, and we're thrilled to have 3 in this bond that are opening in West Cary, presuming everything goes forward here. So this one is the one in the middle. We've got one about 5.5 miles south and one about 5.5 miles north. So I'm excited to be here. It's a sign of progress. I did want to briefly take some of my points out of order after hearing Ms. Grannon review the rather lengthy traffic improvement notes. I think it's apparent why, having just received that report, we're not ready to comment on it. It's fairly extensive. We're going to be working closely with staff, DOT, our own engineering consultants and staff, and unfortunately our budget people, to be sure that we put our best foot forward and try to do what we can do to properly address the traffic that we're impacting, and to be sure that our drivers have an opportunity to get safely to and from school with the children. So we will be bringing that back. We've worked with staff and have set some parameters for the dates by which we'll have those to them. So our intention is by mid-February, so that staff has plenty of time before the Planning and Zoning Board. So we're coming forward. I don't have to argue that much. I think she made my point for me. I did want to note that this use, as she pointed out in her maps, is much less intense than what was there. It scares me to think what the traffic improvements would have been with 300,000 square feet that's contemplated for that area. So it is much less intense, and we're sensitive to it. We want to be good neighbors. We're thrilled to be right next to so many residential areas to provide good access for the students in the area. The proposed use meets the existing demand that's here for school. Your successful growth means high demand for us. So we're working to keep up with it. I wanted to add that we had a neighborhood meeting. We had our property owners within 800 feet that were invited. We went over our proposed rezoning and discussed the plans for the school. And of course, we'll address the specific issues raised when we go through the site plan. But we have met with them and had a good opportunity to hear some of those concerns and to be prepared to deal with those as we move ahead. I did want to note that where we are in the process, our Board of Education has approved the acquisition of this site. Per state law, we've had to go to Chatham County and receive their permission to buy the portion of this property that's actually located over the Chatham County line. It's about 25 feet at the widest point. And then it's been before our Board of Commissioners. So we have great anticipation that we'll be able to successfully navigate our way through this process. As an aside, your staff has been very helpful in our due diligence phases early on to help us understand the challenges with this site and site development and what that might mean, so that we were able to make very informed decisions and be sure that our boards had that information as well. I just wanted to note that the sizes, the amount of square feet that are being requested in this rezoning, 110,000 square feet for a school is really driven by our school prototypes. For us, this is a very tight site. So we've asked for what we need and not much more, just rounded it to what we need. On the other side, I think it's interesting to point out that although that's a 5.17 acre tract, about 2 acres or so are already taken up with a fairly large BMP that treats the stormwater from the Rex Wellness Center. So that site, stormwater, actually crosses the road and utilizes that BMP. So although it's 5 acres and 50,000 square feet, there's really only about 3 acres of that are developable. And I'm sure that if you had any questions about that moving ahead, that information is readily available from GIS. So I think 50,000 square feet of retail may scare some people from a traffic impact, but that full size is going to be very difficult to develop on that site. Let's see. I think that's most of the information that I just wanted to hit a few of the highlights. I thought Ms. Grannon did a great job and saved me an awful lot of time, which is always good. Beyond that, we would appreciate your consideration, and we look forward to working out the details with planning and zoning and seeing you again in April. Happy to answer any questions if you have them later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now's the time for the public hearing for 14 REZ 35 Amberley PDD amendment, and I would invite our first speaker forward.
Good evening. I'm Glenda Top. I am with Glenda S. Top and Associates, and I'm one of the consultants working with the school system. And Ms. Parker did an excellent job going over the proposal. Just want to hit a couple of points, some of which I have heard raised to staff through some emails or calls. On that track that we are asking for, the commercial and office and institutional uses, the uses that are allowed today in that town center site are the same uses that are listed in our document. So if there was no school and it developed as a town center, we're not changing the uses that are currently allowed. So I know there have been some concern about the uses that could happen within that commercial area, but I do want to point out that those uses are currently approved in the PDD document, and we are not changing them at all. We're just leaving them as they are. One other thing I just want to put in for the record is I know in the past there has been discussion about changing the town center site and taking away the commercial and institutional property that was approved with the original Amberley PDD and what was envisioned to be here. Staff alluded to it in the staff report that this site has become less viable over time, particularly since the adoption of the Northwest Area Plan in 1992. And this is due in large part to the Austin Area Plan that was adopted. As we all know, there is development that has happened on that site. There's roughly 960 acres of property out in that area, a good portion of which is approved for commercial and institutional uses. With the proximity of that site to this location, it has made it more difficult for this site to develop as it was originally envisioned. In going through the Austin plan, it was interesting to read, and I just want to point this out, that it stated that the Austin Regional Activity Center is the last of Cary's 4 regional centers, and it's the largest of all the others. So it is really it's been envisioned to be a high-intensity commercial and office development. We feel that the change in the land use from the site being totally town center to a school site, which again is a permitted use in the PDD, and limited commercial will still meet what was envisioned in that area and is a good use for the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Stormy Van Hees. I live out at 631 Finbar Drive, which is going to impact our entire neighborhood. When the lady said it wasn't built, the whole thing just got built in the last year and a half. So all the people that are there, we were never told by the builders that there would be a school. Never. Last I know, there's 2 other elementary schools well within the distance. Matter of fact, Alston Ridge is right across the street. So why we would be putting 2 elementary schools less than a mile together is beyond me. Traffic, that'd be a nightmare. It would be an absolute nightmare out there for traffic. You already have the big stuff being built across 55. You have the apartments already that are being built. You have a lot of homes that are being built in that area. It's great that you want to put a school like you did for Highcroft, but you built Highcroft School first, then you built the development around it. I've been here almost 20 years, and I've lived out in this entire area the whole time. So a couple things is, when I was coming into this meeting, the mayor on the radio, you said about we need to be cautious of what we're doing for the town of Cary, especially in western Cary, that we need to think about what we're really doing out there. Otherwise, you're just going to have so much people on top of people and traffic accidents, and we won't even talk about the traffic accidents that have already been happening out there. So we need to be cognizant that we don't really need a school that is going to be in a very small area, and they kept that traffic thing kept saying about all those roads, but what they forgot about is the 2 developments that are right there, and that is Amberley at Overlook that just got finished with their carriage homes. So we as people, and we just got this notification, by the way, so we haven't had much time to call anybody about this, but what's going to happen is people are going to cut through our neighborhood to go to that school. That's a fact, because we are right off of Yates Store and Hortons, so we're right there. So Pindos and Finbar will feed right into there, because right now that's how people cut through to get to the fitness center. So, you know, we're worried about that. And it's just going to be unsafe. It's just going to be an unsafe area because it's going to be too much people coming and going. I mean, an elementary school has before and after school care. So you're looking at a lot of hours of a lot of people, a lot of traffic, and then the buses. I mean, we can't even get Wake County bus school system to pick our kids up now in a timely fashion out in that area. Right now, Wake County is having a serious bus issue, and they're actually having, I think the vice principal is running the second shift to pick up the high school kids. So the kids are getting to high school late. That's happening in our entire Amberley area right now. The other thing is, most of Wake County schools I've been watching going up. I'm all for building a school, but it's in a larger plot area, much larger than 18 acres. Mills Park Elementary and Alston Ridge have great access, and they're in a campus, so there's direct routes into them and direct routes out. They don't actually go through a neighborhood. This school is going to be built around the 3 existing neighborhoods, including the Del Webb. And I'm not sure how the Del Webb residents have felt, but I think that would be a big impact on them. We have a lot of greenways, but I think the biggest thing is I just closed on this house in November, and not once did the builder tell me there was a proposed school going to be there, because I wouldn't have bought. This is my 4th home in the Western Wake area. I keep moving further. I can't move any further. I'll be in Chatham County. I know, Jennifer, I've been seeing a lot of growth out there, a massive amount of growth, but the school is not a good fit. The fitness center, that was a good fit, because, even though there's a lot of people that come to the fitness center, it's got some road that it can go in and out, because everybody keeps talking about Green Level and O'Kelly Chapel, which, as you know, there's been major accidents out there. That's why we had to have the light put up earlier than we anticipated. So now put a school's operation hours is a lot of time during the morning and afternoon, and then late afternoon and evening. So we're just saying, go judiciously about this, because a lot of us just got told about it a couple days ago in the mail. And we all closed in our homes in the last 5 months. Half the development just closed. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor Weinbrecht, council members of the Town Council for the Town of Cary. My name is Jacob Yakinovich. I'm the president of the Stonewater Master Association, the community to the north of the proposed area. Stonewater is a planned development district comprised of 583 home sites in Wake and Chatham County. The 500 home sites in Wake County are fully built out and individually owned. The remaining 83 home sites in Stonewater's planned development district are located in Chatham County and are developer-owned. The Stonewater Master Homeowners Association Board has had an opportunity to review the proposal and the traffic study, and we offer the following observations and comments regarding this proposal. We ask that the site plan clearly detail exactly the safety crossing points across O'Kelly Chapel Road and the intention of the school to provide for crossing guards across the street. With our current understanding of the proposal, the Wake County Public School System would not provide a bus option for homes that are in the Stonewater community, given the proximity to the school. The solution of walking to school certainly makes sense given the proximity to the school from the Stonewater community. However, this would be a set of elementary school-age children crossing approximately 4 to 5 lanes of a major thoroughfare. The traffic study that is included as part of this proposal, 15 TAR 392, fails to factor in school children pedestrian traffic as part of the traffic plan analysis. We ask that the site plan clearly define traffic calming procedures for the impacted sections of O'Kelly Chapel Road. To be specific, to understand how far on either side of the school will the school zone extend, what shall be the speed limit of the school zone, assuming the school zone extends into Chatham County, is Chatham County also agreeing to a reduced driving speed prior to the school zone? We ask if Wake County Public Schools would provide information regarding expected school performance and school reputation. Knowing that school quality is a wild card and something no one really knows until the school opens, we'd like to at least understand expectations from Wake County Public Schools for the expected performance level of this school in the 90th percentile, in the 75th percentile, 50th percentile, et cetera. Many of our homeowners commute to work by traveling south, then turning eastbound or making a left-hand turn onto O'Kelly Chapel Road. This school sits on the western edge of Wake County. Homes to the west of this property are either in Chatham County or in a 50-plus over community. With an elementary school, we're likely to see traffic bias from the south, heading northbound on Yates Store, northbound on Stonecroft and Green Level Church, and west from the feeder streets onto O'Kelly Chapel Road. This area currently includes a stoplight intersection at the intersection of Green Level Church and O'Kelly Chapel to assist with traffic management. Our opinion is that the area is going to require additional stoplight intersections to manage traffic attempting to turn from O'Kelly Chapel into the school entrance and the traffic attempting to turn eastbound onto O'Kelly Chapel. We ask the site plan includes a school entrance with a stoplight intersection at Claystone and O'Kelly Chapel, as this would help as an avenue for our morning commuters. We'd like to understand how the exterior lighting for this site will impact homes along the north side of O'Kelly Chapel Road. We'd like to understand the building systems infrastructure, where the cooling towers, the generators, the dumpsters are going to be located so that we can determine if there are any noise or odor impacts to residents of Stonewater. We ask if Wake County Public Schools would provide our Homeowners Association Board with information regarding construction traffic times and routes so that we may help in managing the Stonewater community expectations. We ask if Wake County Public Schools would provide our Homeowners Association Board with information regarding construction timetables so that we also may assist in managing the Stonewater community expectations. And we also ask if Wake County Public Schools would provide information regarding accessibility and use of the on-site open area for use by the surrounding communities. And lastly, the traffic study that was proposed as part of this study, we did have an opportunity to review it, and it proposes that the intersection of O'Kelly Chapel and Claystone Lane School Access 1, it's in the handout that I mentioned in section 2.2 in the document. I printed it out for you as a copy, has a directional crossover due to School Access 1 designated as an egress point. According to the preliminary site plans that you see in front of you, School Access 1 is also listed as showing as the primary ingress for school staff and visitors. Claystone Lane itself, with respect to Stonewater, serves as the primary entrance to the Stonewater community, given the immediate access to 4 of our 6 subdivisions from this street, as well as showcasing the primary features of the community. We believe this intersection will also serve as a natural collection point for school children pedestrian crossings across O'Kelly Chapel Road, given the proximity of the intersection to the preliminary site plan building layout. It's because of these combined perspectives that the intersection of O'Kelly Chapel and Claystone be revised as a traffic signal intersection with signalized pedestrian crossing approaches. Overall, we feel the introduction of a school is a good use of this land and will have a net positive effect on the surrounding area, and we're gladly willing to work with the Wake County Public School System and the Town Planning Department as the site undergoes review by the Planning and Zoning Board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good evening. Thanks so much for this opportunity to speak with you. My name is Chad Jemison. I live at 1209 Bluff Oak Drive in Cary, in Village Square, just about a half a mile south of this site. I come wearing 4 hats tonight. The first one is I'm the Executive Director of Triangle Land Conservancy. And while I'm not wearing that hat right now, I am very pleased to meet you, and I look forward to continuing a relationship with you and the staff here in your future open space endeavors, as well as just to make a statement that I'm very pleased to see the depth and thoroughness in which you're reviewing these proposals. So I'm very heartened by that. The 3 hats that I am wearing tonight, though, are 1, I'm a father of 3, 2 of whom are elementary school age students who currently attend Alston Ridge Elementary and who would very likely go to the school once built. The second hat that I'm wearing tonight is as a homeowner, obviously in Village Square, a neighborhood where the future school site, and whether it be year-round or multi-track or single-track in a multi-year, or there's just been great uncertainty in that area, and the opportunity to bring a school site to this area and bring some stability is very helpful for us as homeowners in that area. For any future sale, there have been caps on the schools recently, and that's caused us a lot of distress for the homeowners in the area. And the final one is a former educator. For several years, I taught elementary and middle school right out of college, and so I have a deep interest in education of students generally, and especially my own and those of my neighbors in the area. And the 3 things that I wanted to speak about are There are obviously there's no secret here. There's tremendous overcrowding in schools in the far western Wake County area. Mills Park Elementary has had a cap on it for several years now, continues to do so, and they've decided instead to add trailers for the foreseeable future until there's some alleviation to the school sites. Alston Ridge had been for a long time planned to be multi-track, and it had been a single-track year-round school, and as of next year, as opposed to adding 8 trailers to the soccer field and taking up limited outdoor space, they decided instead to go to what had been planned, to a multi-track system. And yet the growth in that area is still going to put tremendous pressure on that. And an additional school site is very much needed, as the representative from Wake County Schools has talked about. There needs to be another elementary school, and finding sites of at minimum size for an elementary school are increasingly difficult in this area, in a place that makes sense for alleviating the population growth in the school system. So where we stand, there are not ideal, perfect sites left in that part of Wake County anymore for schools, but we have the 18-acre lot that we have. So I come in general broad support of the need for this school. I think it's very important. There have been editorials in the News and Observer stating no more schools on the outskirts of Wake County. It's on the county line. If there's a retraction in population, that may become a vacant school. Well, I tell you, if you go out there and you see the density of homes, that's just not possible. I mean, I know it's great to keep the density in the center of the county because there's more flexibility, but the truth is the density is there. That is not an issue. The second point is that I'd like to talk about is the traffic improvements that were brought up. This neighborhood, it's as if entire communities were built and it's just like, oh, well, the road improvements will get caught up, in the future. And it's as if we're sort of in this limbo halfway zone between built out and yet the road infrastructure hasn't come. Those improvements need to come to our community, and the sooner we get locked in with the plan as to where these major population dense sites with schools or other businesses are, the better it will be to finalize and lock in the road plans and then make the roads safer for our communities. So having that certainty, again, would be helpful. The final point I want to make is just sort of the educator and father in me, of thinking of my children going to the school and spending 6 years of their lives there, is it's 18 acres. Alston Ridge has 1,000 students on it, on a similarly sized campus. And what's happening in Alston Ridge is there's a development that's been built out. 2 years ago, there were trees surrounding it. Now there's a total clear-cut moonscape on one side, which is, it happens, it's there, but that'll be dense. The middle school is being built, another development's being built behind it. I care about our children being able to see a tree at some point during the day. I just think that's part of our humanity, that we ought to have some visible view shed of nature during our day, especially when we're out on a playground. As you see on the site, it's on 2 major roads. We've got a site to the right with the UNC Health System, a newly built community to the south. It's pretty surrounded by dense housing or other types of sites. And I just wonder, a question is just whether or not even 3 acres or 2 acres of commercial development, if there was a way to keep that in a more natural state for our children, that would be great. Thank you very much for your time.
Next speaker, please.
My name's Stan Levine. I live nearby, but I'm not coming to you as a resident. I'm coming to you as a parent, since I was one. What your handouts are is a summary of what I'm going to say with the major points, so it's easier for reference if you have to reference it later. My mother was a teacher. My wife was a teacher. My sister was a teacher. I have even taught at times, but not in elementary school. I have strongly supported education my entire life. I worked as an engineer. I did simulations, sort of like traffic analysis, and I've done that for at least the last 15 years or so. I took a look at what was on here and tried in every way possible to analyze all of the documents. By the way, your staff is fantastic. They provide all the support any resident would ever need. They are great. They are great. Not just this time, every time I've dealt with them. I looked at the 6 criteria for reviewing rezonings, one of which had to do with nature, et cetera. That's fine. But the other 5, I had a problem with every single one, and I had a problem primarily for the safety of the children, primary, not for inconveniences or other things, but the children. The first item was any changing condition that might change what was planned for there. Well, the changing conditions are we're getting older. All of Cary is aging. Okay. There are communities right near there that have no children. So if you take a look at the changing, not just the commercial, but take a look at the changing demographics, you'll see that maybe there's an issue from an aging perspective. The proposal removes transit stops, proposed transit stops. That area needs more transit stops, and as they age, they will need more public transportation, not less. The second area was, is it consistent with the comprehensive plan? No, it is not. It's not consistent with the land use plan. It's not consistent with the Northwest Area Plan. There is no way that it'll support any major or even minor commercial area. Key, though, are statements from the Wake County Public School System, who say that schools should be located east of Green Level and Durham Road. That's not where this is. This is not only located at the county line where the Wake County Public School System says it shouldn't, it's actually located over the county line, a little piece of it. In addition to which, so there'll be no school children coming from that side. It's only 1.5 miles from another elementary school to the north, so there's not going to be a lot of children coming from that side. So already you're at 50% efficiency because it's only got 2 ways the children can be coming for primarily. Mixed use, this leaves less than 10% for the commercial, so it fails the mixed use plan, although it does meet the definition. Including, there was a map error in there, but that's minor. Number 3 is it's on the corner of 2 major thoroughfares, and in effect, except for the little piece, surrounded by streets. Okay, and the children are going to be walking across these major thoroughfares? Luckily, my children are all grown, because I would hate to have any of them attending this school. Significant inverse impacts on the area or on the property, I don't know, but it definitely can't be positive for people who don't have children. So I can't see whether it's going to be positive in any way. It's located in a high traffic area. The 6th one was proposed. Is it suitable for the subject property? I do not think that this property is suitable for a school in any way whatsoever, other than the fact that it might be cheap. But I don't know how cheap it is. There were some pros and cons that were mentioned. In some of the pros was based on what's happened in the past. In the past, the developer used up a significant portion for residential. And because of that, he's now forced into this case, as far as we can tell. The cons, it defeats the entire purpose of that area. The lack of transit stops where it's located. Just in summary, this just seems to be a very poor choice for a school, anyway. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Next speaker, please. Anyone else for this public hearing? I see no one. We'll close the public hearing, open it up to council members for questions or comments.
I'll make a few comments.
Okay.
Go ahead, Don. You go first.
You go ahead. It's your district.
I don't mind. Okay. All right. One of the very first things I ever got involved with when I was in my 20s, and I was living out in Western Cary. Lori and I moved into the same neighborhood, and I purchased a lot that was adjacent to a piece of land that had a sign on it that said Future Town of Cary Park. So I thought I was purchasing on on a piece of property. I thought I was purchasing a piece of property that would be adjacent to a park. It turned out that the town and the county did a swap, and an elementary school was placed there. And so my first piece of involvement was getting involved about how this school would fit into our neighborhood. And the first speaker really recalled for me a lot of the issues that I was concerned about. I was concerned about the bus traffic. I was concerned about chain link fence going up that might impact the look of my community. I was worried about large light stations that might spill over light. So I really understand the concerns that you have if you live adjacent to this and are concerned about the impacts of a school, especially if you don't have children that would be attending this school. So I understand that. The experience that I had was I articulated those concerns to Wake County, and they were able to address our neighborhood's concerns through the design of the site plan. And they were really able to talk about that looping of traffic. They were able to mitigate a lot of our concerns. And I'm very pleased, actually, to live adjacent to a school. It's been very, very good for our neighborhood. So I can see the advantages of it now. I'm looking back at it. But at the time, I did have a lot of concerns. So I really respect the concerns that people have about this, and we take it very seriously. This council has been really grappling over the last couple years. We do not have enough school capacity for the children that live in Northwest Cary. It is simply the truth. We do not have enough school seats. Our schools are being capped, and that impacts our property values, it impacts our quality of life, and most importantly, it impacts the childhood of the people who are affected, the children who cannot attend school with their neighbors because they're being sent away to a further school. So this council takes it very seriously that we need to have more schools. The only problem is that we have so many communities either built or entitled to be built that we don't have a lot of choices left for land for these schools. So while I understand the point of Mr. Levine that this is maybe not the ideal location for a school being located at the intersection of two big roads, I fully understand that. On the flip side, sometimes we don't have the luxury of going with the ideal situation. And we have many instances of very successful schools that are located on big roads. Two of those are Davis Drive Elementary and Davis Drive Middle that are on a very busy street, a very, very busy commuter road, Davis Drive. So we do have experience with it, and we have crossing guards, and I would venture to say that the parents who send their children there are very pleased because people are tripping over themselves to live in the Davis Drive district and have their children sent there. So in spite of being on that major road, I do see that the school is worthwhile. It's always a tricky thing. I will tell you that one of the jobs of a council member is to meet with applicants for projects well before the citizens ever hear about it. So going back over the last 5 years, I can recall several meetings that I have had with applicants who wanted to put a commercial development at this intersection, developers who wanted to bring a grocery store anchor with some smaller shops. The problem is that in North Carolina, the Department of Transportation limits the amount of full access entrances on these roads, and they legislate it by the number of feet between full access entrances. And it was not viable for these commercial developments to go here with the limited access. And we went round and round in circles. I went to a member of the Board of Transportation for DOT to see if he might be able to advocate for us. And I was told no. They would not go against what their staff thinks is the best idea. And it just did not look like it was a viable site. And I think that's actually how this land has ended up being available for a school site, because the entities that owned it and want to develop it for commercial, as we had originally envisioned, could not achieve that. So although I know it would be ideal for us to be able to have this cute town center right there, and it would certainly be ideal for a lot of people who live close by and would want to walk to that. It doesn't look like it's viable from the perspective of a mixed-use developer. And there that's just one of the many reasons why I think the council is very seriously considering this proposal for a school. So I wanted to give you the full perspective of, what we're thinking about up here at the table and why we're entertaining this rezoning.
Mr. France?
I'm glad I let Ms. Robinson speak first, because she says things a lot nicer and politer than I probably would have. First to Ms. Parker, thank you. I hope you relay our thanks back to your board and the folks that you work with, that we're pleased on your efforts to help site a school here in Cary. We, as Ms. Robinson spoke, we desperately need more schools. Seems like everybody also thinks we need more schools until they want to put one next to their neighborhood. I too live next to a school, right behind Cary High School. I also live right across the street from Franklin Field, Mills Field, Cary Swim Club, and a church. Now, granted, all those things were there before I bought my home, so I can't say that they came in after the fact and I had the concerns that you and some others have, but I've definitely had to live in that environment for over 20 years. So, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I honestly don't know that I could think of much of a better neighbor to my home or residential than a school. Children coming and going, playing, enjoying their childhood like you spoke about. The ball fields across the street are used for school practice and or other athletic events. The swim club my neighborhood is just a lot of kids having a great time and enjoying their childhood and going to school. And I wouldn't change a thing about it. So I can appreciate some of the concerns I heard tonight, not all. I would agree with Ms. Robinson that if you do have concerns and you would like to continue to work with Wake County Schools to try to convey those and maybe get some of those addressed, I would encourage anybody to do so. But I guess my only concern is seeing that laundry list of traffic improvements that I think that the school system is going to have a very hard time trying to address that. So if there's anything that we can do to help, we're open. We'd like to do whatever we possibly can or could to help. Devil is in the details, but at the end of the day, I look forward to another elementary school in Western Wake, in Western Cary.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I want to thank all of the speakers tonight. I thought every one of them were extremely thoughtful in their comments, very well thought out in excellent, excellent points. I noticed as y'all were speaking, Mrs. Parker is taking copious notes. So I think that's a good sign, and I sure hope there's going to be time for dialogue between the school board and the neighbors. Please do whatever you can to resolve some of these things, Mrs. Parker. To me, the traffic, especially the traffic safety aspect, is the most important thing here. Despite the need for this school, if we're going to put these kids in an unsafe environment, I'm going to have trouble supporting it. But basically, coming into this, just looking at the staff report, before I saw all those traffic improvements that were necessary tonight and heard a lot of these comments, it just seemed to me like, we were seeing rezoning after rezoning that's adding residential units to West Cary. We had a couple public hearings earlier tonight like that. And we keep hearing that there's not enough schools in West Cary. Well, looking at this, just very simplistically, here's a site that, if we didn't do anything, would allow hundreds of more residential units on it that, with this rezoning, are being removed. There are no more residential going to be added to this particular site, and we're getting a school. So, I mean, it just seemed to me to be a very simple situation. I've learned tonight nothing is simple. But I sure hope things can be worked out, and I'm optimistic that they can.
I want to follow up a little bit, just to help for those who might not be understanding a lot of what we're talking about. We're talking about the type of use here, and if we deny this type of use, that means they can build tomorrow at the current use that's allowed, and that would be hundreds of residential units, and there's not a decision by us at all. They can do that now.
And the commercial.
And the commercial, all of that can happen, and there's nothing we can do about it. A couple of other things I wanted to mention. Someone talked about several site plan issues, and those are important issues. Staff has recorded these, will know these, and will note these, but it will not be a council decision unless there's a quasi-judicial hearing, and then we will look at site plan issues. But unless that happens, that will not be a council decision. Specifically, I also want to mention that traffic lights, the way they're determined in Cary, and staff, please correct me if I'm wrong, our staff will measure the criteria, but it's NCDOT that makes a decision whether or not there's a traffic light, not the town. The Wake County schools do have decisions on traffic related to the schools. Construction time, that's determined by the town of Cary. I believe it's 9 to 7 p.m. on weekends and 7 to 7 on weekdays. Is that right?
I'll need to double
Something
check
like that. But we can get that information for you. So that is already determined. There's an ordinance, a noise ordinance, which limits construction time. And then the other issues that I was trying to take notes on, exterior lighting, dumpsters, et cetera, are all site plan issues that staff has taken note of. But my overall feeling is I want a school to happen. I'm like Mr. Uraha, I'm very concerned about the traffic issues and the safety issues mentioned, and I take that to heart. I'm not committing one way or the other, but I can tell you I desperately want a school. And if between now and then we can address at least most of those issues, and like Ms. Robinson said, it's not the ideal place, or somebody said.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's not the ideal.
It's not the ideal place, but if we can make it happen and make it safe, then I'll think it's a win-win, and that's what I'm hoping we get out of this process.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, I happen to live in the same neighborhood as Ms. Robinson when the town park turned to a school, and I absolutely agree that it's been one of the best things for our neighborhood. It's created community, and it's also created a very active community because of the proximity to the school, to the residential. You will see, at least at our school, we overwhelmed the bike marks. We actually had to do a crowdfunding to get more bike racks because so many kids feel safe enough to ride in packs and to walk to school that we had to put so many out there. So I think that actually residential being close to the school is really a good thing, not just for the residential, but for our community, for the health and viability of the community. And I understand absolutely where the HOA presidents come in. I think there needs to be some very directed work at the safe ingress and egress between the Stonewater neighborhood and the school. I mean, I'd love to see some really crazy out there grade separated safe ways for kids and to get to school, because I think when they can walk to school, when they can ride their bikes to school, that takes a car off the road, that takes a car out of carpool lane, right? And it allows these parents to feel that their children are getting to school safely. And that's the most important thing, is to allow them to do that. The other thing I'd like to say is I'd love to make sure that the neighborhoods that as they're added, that there are safe ways for all those kids to get there. Sidewalks, I'd love to see a connection over to the wellness center. We all know that people will be going from the wellness center to that office property. Let's make sure there's a safe crosswalk there. We've seen that the Mills Park's parents today want to walk and have their kids bike to school. And I appreciate the homeowner that came and spoke about Mills Park. It is a wonderful campus, but it's about a half a mile from the road and from residential on the other side of the road. And today, parents don't feel very safe letting their kids cross that 5-6 lane road, depending on how you count, and they basically go with their kids. So the more we can do to make that a possibility, the healthier our entire community is. And I'm very supportive of this idea, but as somebody said, the devil's in the details. love to see it go forward, hear what the rest of the community thinks and P&Z as well. So thank you for bringing this forward, and thanks to all of the parents and residents that have come out and given your opinions. That absolutely goes into the making of a great plan.
Any other comments? Okay, so this will go to the Planning and Zoning Board. If there are changes between now and the Planning and Zoning Board, there'll be a hearing at the Planning and Zoning Board. If not, the Planning and Zoning Board will deliberate and make a recommendation to council, and we will see it, I heard, April from someone.
Our target is for high likelihood of a second public hearing in March. And then Town Council in April.
Okay.
Second public hearing at P&Z, right?
If there is a second public hearing.
Right. It'll go to P&Z in March with a high likelihood of a second public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Grannon, and thank you for those who came out and for those who spoke. We're now going to move to our next public hearing. It's 5.6 Land Development Ordinance Text Amendments. We're going to hear a report from our staff and conduct a public hearing. We'll not take action on this tonight, and we're going to refer it to the Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation. Ms. Bierman.
This is the public hearing for the proposed Round 20 amendments to the Land Development Ordinance. With regard to the schedule, this just shows a tentative schedule for these items, would be forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation, and then could come back to this board for decision no sooner than April 21st of this year. There are about 8 items included in this round. There's background information and the specific text for each of these in the staff report, and I'll go through each of those briefly. First item relates to the Walnut Street Corridor Transition District. This amendment would revise development standards for the infill subdistrict of the Corridor Transition District. This amendment is based on council direction to evaluate these district standards to provide more flexibility for redevelopment of the infill parcels. And these standards were developed with input from the property owner. This map shows in the colored area shows the boundary of the entire corridor transition area. There are 2 parcels included in the infill district. This existing parcel on the north side of Walnut Street is one, and this is a parcel that would really have the potential for redevelopment that could be facilitated by this amendment. The other parcel in the infill district is located on the south side of Walnut Street, and that is currently developed as a town park. This chart summarizes the changes that are proposed with this amendment. With regard to land use, there are a number of uses, variety of uses that are allowed in the infill district. This change would add townhomes as an additional permitted residential use in the district with a maximum density of 5 units per acre. There are also some changes to standards related to the perimeter buffer. Currently, there's a 40-foot type A buffer required for any use within 300 feet of Walnut Street, and then uses that are farther back from Walnut Street would require a 25-foot type A buffer. The proposed amendment would reduce the perimeter buffer to 20 feet, again as a type A, for townhomes and detached dwellings only. The remaining uses, if they were developed, would maintain the existing buffer requirements. Also, there is a masonry wall requirement, buffer wall required within the various sub-districts, or including the infill district. With this proposed change, the buffer wall would not be required for detached dwellings and townhomes in the infill sub-district only. In all other cases, for other uses and for the other sub-districts, that buffer wall requirement would remain. The minimum lot width is currently 50 feet for all uses. With this change, the minimum lot width would be 34 feet for townhomes and 40 feet for detached dwellings. And again, all of these changes are only for the infill district. And likewise, building setbacks would be reduced for townhomes, 0-foot side setback, 3-foot rear, 18-foot front. For detached dwellings, there would be 3-foot side setbacks, a 3-foot rear setback. and an 18-foot front setback. And the current building separation that applies, it would be 16 feet between townhome buildings. That change would be reduced to 6 feet. This is just an illustration of the proposed changes to the perimeter buffer. You can see in the green shaded area, depending on the distance from Walnut Street, where it would be either a 40 or a 25-foot perimeter buffer currently. And then the red dashed line shows where that buffer would be reduced to 20 feet for detached homes or townhomes. And then this is just a closer view to give some sense of scale for those buffer requirements. The second proposed amendment relates to internet sweepstakes or electronic gaming, as we refer to it. This would be a new use classification, new use specific standards that would address these types of uses, which are currently not addressed in the ordinance at all. There was, in 2010, the state legislature did attempt to make the sweepstakes uses illegal, but the decision of the legislature to prohibit the use was overturned in the Court of Appeals, and then more recently was upheld by the North Carolina Supreme Court. So we are seeking to amend the ordinance to establish where these uses would be allowed and to specify use-specific standards so that we could ensure neighborhood compatibility where these uses are included. The standards that we're proposing would allow internet or electronic gambling or gaming as a principal use in the general commercial and industrial districts, and in the portion of the office research and development district that's within the airport overlay would also be allowed within the commercial subdistrict of the town center, and a zoning compliance permit would be required so that we could track the locations. In the general commercial, industrial, and ORD districts, a 500-foot separation requirement is included from residential use or zoning, daycare uses, schools, religious assembly, and any other electronic gaming operations. In the commercial subdistrict of the town center, the 500-foot separation would apply only to another electronic gaming operation. Other standards that are included relate to minimum parking requirements, and also a provision that no alcohol be served in conjunction with these uses. Would point out staff is aware of two existing electronic gaming businesses. Both of these are located in the commercial subdistrict of the town center. We did take a look at the location of these two sites. The separation requirement would be satisfied for both of those businesses, both in terms of distances from the residential uses and in terms of the separation from each other. So we would, or let me rephrase that. One of them we know is separated from with the 500 feet from all of the other use separation requirements. The two businesses are separated 500 feet from each other. With regard to one of them, I can't say for certain whether or not it meets all of the other separation requirements, but those would be issues that would be looked at if this amendment is approved to determine if one or both of those could be permitted. In addition, we have some provisions related to the electronic gaming machines as an accessory use. This could allow up to four machines as an accessory use for legal conforming principal use, except another electronic gaming operation. And this could occur in the general commercial district or the commercial subdistrict of the town center. The separation requirements would not apply here, and an accessory use permit would be required. And I believe we're aware of perhaps 6 or 7 sites within town that may qualify for this. Item C is an amendment that would clarify the intent of ordinance requirements that rezonings and other development-related decisions be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Again, this is more clarifying language to maintain the flexibility for the board and clarity in making decisions. Item D includes several changes related to our transportation system requirements. With these changes, the planning director would be able to approve a development plan if a TIA was done within the previous 2 years, and the plan does not otherwise require council approval. Also, a TIA would be required for if a rezoning is contiguous to another property that has been rezoned within the previous 12 months, and the cumulative trip generation would exceed the threshold of 100 peak hour trips, then it provides a way to look at the cumulative impacts of rezonings in the requirements for traffic impact studies when they're in close proximity. And also the timeline, the life time, I guess, for the TIA would be extended from 3 years to 5 years. Item E includes 3 amendments that are related to signs. The first relates to sign colors and would allow the use of an alternate sign color on special occasions for non-residential buildings that were 5 stories or taller to provide some flexibility there. In that case, at any point in time, if the sign color was changed to denote some special event, all the colors that could be changed to would be approved as part of a uniform sign plan. Also, there'd be a change related to temporary banners so that 2 instead of 1 banner could be allowed for new businesses, provided that they were on opposite sides of the building so that you would never see more than 1 at any given time. And also a change to clarify that signs on architectural features of buildings may not extend above the roof line of the building. Item F includes a number of use-related standards. The first would eliminate a minimum density requirement for detached dwellings and activity centers. The second would allow light industrial use to be approved in portions of the town center where retail use is allowed, provided that any goods produced on the site would also be sold on the site. And this amendment was initiated with input from the downtown manager. A third change would allow the rental of passenger vehicles by right in a general shopping center subject to limits on the number of vehicles, availability of parking, prohibiting vehicle signs. And this is a change that would just provide more convenience to give an option for some rental car pickup in areas other than near the airport. And also, wellness centers would be allowed as a permitted use in an industrial district. Item G includes several changes related to the approval of minor modifications. First, this would allow the planning director to make a decision on a minor modification that would otherwise, he would otherwise be authorized to make, even if the site plan as a whole required action by town council. It would also increase the degree to which the planning director could make a modification from 10 to 15% of a standard, and likewise it would increase the percentage change that town council could approve from 25 to 30%. And finally, a couple of changes to allow the Transportation and Facilities Director to reduce the width of a required right-of-way dedication up to 5%, and then changes greater than 5% would be a decision of the town council. And item H includes a number of technical and minor amendments. These are all listed in your staff report. I'll be glad to go over them individually if there are any questions. And that concludes staff's presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions after the public hearing.
Okay, very good.
We'll call for a public hearing first.
This time is the time for the public hearing for Land Development Ordinance Text Amendments, Round 30, A through H, and I would invite the first speaker forward.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I'm John Shaw from Cary. Regarding item D, transportation requirements of round 30 of the LDO amendments, I have a few brief comments. The proposed amendment would require traffic impact analysis for rezoning if the property to be rezoned is contiguous to property that had been rezoned within the past year, and together they required a traffic study. I support that change. I think that it is, we've talked quite a bit about cumulative impacts, and this helps to reduce that. However, I would prefer that rather than being a requirement for just contiguous properties, that it be expressed in feet, perhaps 100 feet separation between properties. If they're closer than that, it would trigger that new requirement. Also, the proposal adds an exception for the requirements of traffic studies if the existing intersection already meets the requirement of a comprehensive transportation plan, and I oppose that exemption. The traffic study will typically be completed well after the CTP, and it will often reflect changes in traffic not anticipated when the comprehensive transportation plan was done. So therefore, I think that the traffic study recommended improvements should be required regardless of the transportation plan. And I'll provide my comments in more detail in writing to the Planning and Zoning Board, the staff, and eventually to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Betsy McFarland, and I'm a resident at 1219 Sturtevant Drive. I'm here to speak to you this evening about the amendment to the Walnut Street corridor. We are, my family and I, my 3 sons, are relatively new residents of Cary. I am a homeowner, having lived there now for 3 years. We love our family neighborhood. We love the atmosphere of Sturtevant and Walnut Hills, and most importantly, having come from Florida, we love the trees that are in our neighborhood. And I'm here this evening actually representing about 15 families that have been communicating recently since we were notified of the amendments proposed to the infill area on Walnut Street. We have several concerns with those proposed amendments. My property backs up to the infill area in question, although we are generally in favor of the redevelopment in hopes of improving our property values, but not by giving away some of the protections and the requirements that protect our homes and our neighborhood. At this time, we have no information as to the specific type of planned development for the property, although we would, of course, advocate for a residential use. Giving away both the requirement for the sufficient setback and a wall seems too generous and could, in fact, negatively affect our property values. We especially are concerned if there is commercial development. We have already had people cutting through our yards. Without some type of barrier, even if not a wall, we are concerned that that would continue. And of course, being a family neighborhood, we are concerned with noise and traffic. We are especially concerned if there is, if the tree canopy is eliminated with overdevelopment in this area. One element of the amendment that seems to be the most negotiable for us as a community is the setback. We would advocate for nothing less than 30 feet, although most support keeping the 40 feet that are in effect. Finally, I wish to express my concern that even though the amendments are applicable to the infill area on Walnut Street at this point in time, it seems a rather slippery slope. Others could easily request these same amendments to be applicable to their properties. And it seems that these amendments begin to erode some of the development protections that have made Cary, Cary. And if you are concerned about school overcrowding in Western Cary, any increased residential in our area is going to put a huge strain on the schools that currently are served by Walnut Street, both on this side of US 1 and the other. My children go to Dillard, but the others now with the redistricting on this side of US 1 are just as crowded. So we are concerned about that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Michael Wirtz. I reside at 1225 Sturdivant Drive, also in Walnut Hills. And I am here also to speak to item A. So first, before I start on that, I want to say all the materials that I have in the packets for you there, I got off your website. It's very nice, works very well. I found a lot of information there. And also, I would like to publicly thank Wayne Nicholas and Scott, I guess I better put my glasses on, Scott Ramage, for their help in this as well. I spoke with them yesterday and today to get some clarifications on some items. So everything that I had to say is on this one piece of paper, so I'm going to start talking very quickly because there's a lot to say here. So I'm here to speak about the proposed changes to the standards of the land development ordinance associated with the infill subdistrict of the corridor transitional zoning district along a portion of Walnut Street. That's how it's described, so that's what I thought I'd put it out there. So the first paragraph of the introduction in the Walnut Street corridor plan, which came out in about 2002, makes the following statement. The Walnut Street corridor provides visitors with their first and sometimes only impression of Cary and is an essential thoroughfare for residents. As a primary gateway boulevard into Cary from the southeast, the Walnut Street corridor deserves special consideration. This Walnut Street corridor plan provides that special consideration by proposing land use and design standards for future development along the corridor. Key word there is future. The plan proposals were made for future development. Well, the future's here. You know, it was 2002 when this was done. Where we are in the future now from then. But someone wants to change the standards that were adopted when the current plan was created 12 years ago. I think I know who that is. In fact, I know who that is. A lot of energy and thought went into developing the original plan, and it appears to be a good compromise plan. Although the current dimensional and density standards for the corridor transitional zone allow for a higher density than the surrounding R12 zone, the current standards do allow for a reasonably compatible development of the infill parcel. Mr. Weinbrecht, Mayor Weinbrecht, Mr. Smith, and Ms. Robinson were on the town council at the time that all of this came about with the Walnut corridor plan. And I don't know what the discussions went on within the council at that time, but apparently council thought as a whole that it was a good idea, the way it was written. And so that's why it was adopted. Why change it now? That's my point. The vision that was imagined and the plan that was adopted in 2002, all of that is still valid now. There's no reason to change any of that. The conditions and environment of the Walnut Street corridor have not changed significantly since 2002. Only 3 homes along the Walnut Street corridor have been converted to businesses. The Walnut Street Park was created, which was an excellent thing. It's a very nice park. Good use of that land. The Bradford pear trees along both sides were cut down to allow for sidewalks. So that's the main reason why that was done. And Walnut Street was repaved. The traffic is still a fairly high volume, but manageable, I guess. The mobile home park is still there. And the neighborhoods, more importantly, surrounding the infill parcel remain low density, mature neighborhoods consisting completely of single-family detached homes. Some of the people in Walnut Hills who live in the homes adjacent to the infill parcel are the original owners. They've been there for 40 years. We've been in our house 24 years. So several of the folks along there have been in their homes at least 15 years. The infill parcel we're discussing is the only one of its kind in Cary. There is no other type of infill parcel like this. It's a sub-district of the unique, one-of-a-kind Walnut Street Corridor Transitional Zoning District. The housing developments that completely surround the area, I don't have a sign up there or anything to look at there, but I put some stuff in your packets there. The housing developments that completely surround this area are R12. They've never been anything else but R12. So low-density residential. The housing developments across the street and for quite a ways from across Walnut. Is that all my time? 24 seconds left?
Is it?
I'm not fast. We'll only cut to the chase then, all right? You can read later. So here's my saying. Please just send this back to Mr. Weeks. Tell him to fix this because we don't want this in our neighborhood like that. It's wrong to change everything. And hopefully you will change it or leave it the way it is and have him work at it at another time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. To your left. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Carl Bailey. I live at 1205 Larley Lane in the Ivy Meadows subdivision adjacent to Walnut Hills. I'd like to support the two previous speakers that talked about this Walnut Hills corridor item. In addition to that, and so do several of the other neighbors in my subdivision. One of the things we're concerned about first is traffic. And you did make the observation about schools today, so it looks like to me that this change would increase the density in this infill area, and we don't think increased density then would be useful or helpful, at least to the people in our neighborhood. I'd like to make one other comment about item H and the technical minor amendments. The first one says delete the requirements for neighborhood meetings held by applicants prior to submittal of rezoning applications. It seems like to me that reducing the amount of conversation and interaction between the citizens of Cary and potential rezoning is a bad idea. One of the things that's happening in our neighborhood that we've recently had a neighborhood meeting about is the Top Golf discussion at Cary Town Center, and that discussion was very helpful to the people in the neighborhood. Without that discussion, then we wouldn't have had a chance to provide feedback to the applicant, and they wouldn't have had a chance to tell us what they're thinking. So we think this this deletion is a bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker for this public hearing.
My name is Michelle Huber. I live at 1229 Sturtevant Drive. And as with many of these other people, I am talking about item A, the Walnut Street corridor. I understand that there needs to be redevelopment and that things do move forward, but there was a beautiful plan put in place to try and protect the existing people that live there. I have lived in my home for 15 years. It's the only home my son has ever known. That's only a drop compared to many of these other wonderful neighbors who have lived there their entire lives. They have lived there 2 and 3 times as long as I have when we moved into our home. And now we have a beautiful wooded area in the back and some wonderful neighbors who live over in the trailers that have been fantastic. If you do make these changes, it would drastically and devastatingly impact our home and our lives. You would be allowing somebody to come in, and if all of these changes were put in place, they would be allowed to put townhomes within feet of my backyard with only a 3-foot buffer behind them. You're taking away our buffer zone. I live towards the top of the street, and so the buffer would be removed from 45 feet down to 20 feet. And then in addition, they don't even have to put up a masonry wall. If all of those things are taken into development, I end up with townhomes in my backyard. None of you would want that. If this was going into your backyard, you would not want a townhome right in your backyard with no buffer zone and no masonry wall. And this is a large concern to us. It would devastatingly impact the value of our properties. I would not be able to sell a home with townhomes in the backyard for the value that I paid for it. And many of these other people would be in the same position. It would drastically impact our lives. I understand that part of the decision that you considered is that we have a large backyard. We purchased a large backyard. It's not so that we can use part of our large backyard for the developer to ignore the buffer zone for us. It was so that we could use that for our own living space, not for other people to use up because they don't feel like having a buffer zone and a masonry wall. This would be a devastating decision. And I would hope that each of you would consider this as if it were your own homes and take that into account when you try to make this decision. It would be a very, very bad decision to change this zoning. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Anyone else for this public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing, open it up to council members for questions or comments. I know, Mr. Smith, you and I sat down with many residents in their homes with this item A years ago. I don't know how many visits we had.
Jennifer had a lot of feedback in it also.
Yeah, so I remember that very well.
Can I ask you a couple of questions for clarification from the staffer? First, if this change would happen, can commercial still go in there?
The same uses that are currently allowed would continue to be allowed, which could include commercial.
It would?
Yes.
Okay, we'll see.
I believe if you look on page 5
I'm
of
looking
your staff report, there's a list of all the uses that are allowed in the district.
This goes under the category of no good deed goes unpunished. The intent back then, and please, both of you, correct me if you remember it wrong, but we were going through at that period of time some real deterioration on Walnut Street. We were worried about it widening even more. We were worried about the quality of life of the very speakers that have spoke tonight and everything else. And at the same time, we had the grand vision of having some commercial on that street and changing some of those homes and changing the look and the feel. And the dilemma we had was what to do with those two infills, those two little peninsulas. One we solved in a way by having the park. But on this one, the vision at that time was that it would grow into a commercial or retail area. As a result of that, to appease and to make sure that we protect the neighbors, we put in excessive buffer and we put in like the Great Wall of China. We put in the big wall. And the whole intent of that wall was to buffer between unlike uses. You know, you've heard all the other hearings we had today with soft transitions and everything else. Well, that would have been a harsh one. At the same time, we were trying to encourage redevelopment of the older homes, and we were trying to figure out what to do because there was a lot of rental property coming that was in disrepair. There was rental property in disrepair, and we were trying to revitalize Walnut Street to protect the very owners that are concerned now. So when this question came up about putting in multifamily, my feedback was as long as it's townhomes of a low density, then the need for a great wall basically goes away, because can you put the map up of the homes surrounding? Huge backyards, high density, high canopy. So, the thought was, do you really need for a similar use, especially a use that's less, I think is less dense, you can correct me if I'm wrong, than the trailer park, that this would be a great transition, and it was a well-intentioned change to, one, since the commercial and retail wasn't coming, that we have an opportunity to put in, I think it's, by code, it'll be no more than 15 or 18 townhomes, And at the same time, you don't need the wall to buffer between similar uses, and you don't need the excessive buffer between similar uses. What we did with that previous large buffer and the wall was to protect you from a dissimilar use. So that's the quandary we're in. This is going through the public hearing. You know, I encourage you to stay involved, get in touch with me. But it was an intent to continue to protect you, but at the same time to stimulate something in that area other than the trailer park that might be a welcome addition to the community. It was all, that was my intention. So if you all have different intentions, you can speak for yourselves. So that is why we wanted to go through a full public hearing process and a full notice process. So, you know, I think it should continue to go through, and we can continue to get feedback from planning and zoning. I welcome all citizen feedback, but I want everybody to know what the intent was. It's not to cheapen your property, make compromise to your property. The intent is all that we still maintain our rigorous codes. Now, the thing that's coming up now is if it maintains the ability to have commercial in there, then I want something written in this that says that it remains in its current state if it's for that use. I mean, that's, I don't know if that can happen or not, but that's
the text that's written in there where any of the standards that are reduced, it is specified that it applies only to the single family and the townhome use. So if a commercial use were to go in, all the existing
okay, that's what I recall, and I just wanted to
yes.
make sure that didn't
That's correct.
change. And I want to also publicly apologize to an individual that wrote me. The individual, I was misinformed that a different letter went out, and I thought it was from the potential applicant. So when that individual talked to me, I said that we're going through this process, but I didn't connect the two letters. I didn't connect our letter for tonight's hearing. So I still have that individual's email on file, and I will get back to him. But I said to him, I don't think there's a need for you to be here tonight because you're going to an applicant's meeting, and we're not supposed to be there. So I made a big mistake. I got confused based on the feedback I got about the letter. I thought he received a letter from a potential applicant. So I felt I ought to publicly apologize that because I actually discouraged someone from coming tonight, and I'll get back to that. So that's an aside, but those are my thoughts, and I just wanted to share them.
The only thing I would add is I too, I don't know what the right word is, concern might be too strong, but I'm interested in changes in what's being proposed between these two similar uses. I don't call them like uses. There's townhomes different from single-family home and R12, especially even if the townhomes are lower density. So I'm looking for some change in setbacks, buffering, something. I understand the Great Wall of China, whatever the wall is, that's just cost prohibitive. That's why we haven't seen anything happen there. I don't see that remaining in the future. So I don't think a wall's feasible, but some type of buffering, the zero lot line or whatever it was, 3 feet.
Right.
That's silly. I mean,
Right.
3 feet is this far.
Got to be some.
I'm hoping there's some change, some give and take, and I'm hoping the residents, like Mr. Smith said, will work with us through this, and maybe we can come up with something where everybody's happy with the result.
Yeah, I would say similar comments. I mean, I think what I'm hearing and what I would be feeling if I were in the same situation is that my neighborhood was under attack or under siege, which is what we used to call it a long time ago, under siege, because to have the buffer reduced and then the setbacks reduced so much and then the wall taken down, it's just too much. And, you know, the fact of the matter is a 40-foot buffer has been in place since we approved this. So people living adjacent to it or those who moved in since it was done are accustomed to the idea of 40 feet. So if the buffer is going to be reduced down, we can't also take those units and squish them right up against there. I mean, if anything, you would take the buffer down because you say, look, it's really justified because the adjacent properties have a generous yard just like yours, and it's very harmonious. But it's too much to push down the setback in the backyard, and then
All the way up to the other one.
and then and then also
agree.
I mean, the 3 feet is nothing. And does that even include, like, does that mean the pad of like their porch could exceed beyond that, or is that the edge of what anything could be done there?
That would be the edge of any development on the individual.
Okay, so if they did a little patio, they could have patio plus 3 feet beyond it.
Well, actually, a patio could extend into a certain amount into the setback, so there wouldn't be any roof structure within the setback, but there could be a patio where that extends, but nothing would extend into the buffer itself.
Well, yeah, nothing officially would, but speaking realistically, because we've seen this time and again, someone moves into there, most people don't go and say, explain to me what the buffer is and how we are supposed to maintain this buffer. Most people look at it and go, why are there twigs right next to the edge of my patio? I'm going to take those out so my kids can have whatever, a space for a sandbox or whatever. And before you know, that 20-foot buffer is down to a 7-foot buffer, and everybody's like, I didn't know that was it. Why would you put my porch right up against an undisturbed buffer? That doesn't make sense. So I think there's some real problems here that are substantial enough that it may impede the applicant's ability to pursue what he wants to do, but it doesn't impede development in general, residential development in general, from occurring here. I would say we just need to use a common sense approach and really go back to what we always say, is that these developments ought to be harmonious, and the devil's in the details of what makes that harmonious.
Other comments from this end?
I would just say I appreciate the history lesson. No, it's always good to hear that kind of stuff, you know? I mean, I believe the intent, however many years ago, was honorable, just like the intent today is honorable. But I think as maybe things weren't quite done so perfect back in the day, they might not be so perfect today. So I would concur that I'm not a fan of the wall. If it were to be a residential product, we don't require walls today between residential developments. So that's an unfair burden on this property owner. And in some ways, just an unrealistic, I think, expectation for the existing residents, but wholeheartedly share the concerns regarding the buffer width and, you know, and protecting these residents that live there. You know, part of the reason we're looking at this is because we haven't seen any change that we were hoping to see. And I do believe some of that would be positive. So I would just echo most of y'all's comments. I really would.
And a little bit more history, and I hope my memory's correct. I grew up here in the 50s and 60s, and I always remember that trailer park. I think it's always been there.
Wow.
I could be wrong, maybe my memory's wrong, but I always remember that being.
It's historic.
Yes.
Is that a new qualification?
So you talk about not changing. It hasn't changed in a long time. So other comments?
I have comments on some other items, but
Okay.
not on A.
Oh, shoot, I forgot all about the other ones.
Are we going to go through them one at a time?
Go ahead.
Or
Yeah, that's a good question.
how would you like to
Just
do
jump in.
I'll just
Yeah,
jump
go
in.
for it.
Well, on item C on the comprehensive plan, last time you may recall, I had some questions and some concerns on the wording. That wording has been changed. Thank you, Mrs. Bierman. And as far as I'm concerned, it's very satisfactory at this point. And on item D, the transportation item, based on Mr. Shaw's comments, he said he was going to put them in writing and send them on to P&Z. I hope he also copies staff on that. Just first time I heard them was what he said, and they sure sounded like it made sense to me in both cases, especially the contiguous versus the distance required. So I would hope you take planning and zoning and staff takes that into consideration.
Yes.
And may I just make a quick comment on that? You know, NCDOT imposes this rule that you cannot have a full access break, but every 1,200 feet. That, to me, 100 feet may not even be big enough, because, I mean, you're talking about a neighborhood was 105 feet away, still using the same full access entrance. So I think we need to look at that number and kind of figure out what might be a logical and fair number.
And I kind of wanted to touch on that one. That was the one I also wrote down, that I agree with most of Mr. Shaw's comments, except the one that traffic improvements should be required regardless of the CTP. We have a policy, and if you know, that for the most part, we don't want to see more than 4-lane roads in town, and things of those natures where, you know, a TIA might indicate something beyond that. I don't know that we're looking to be that rigid and that strict. I mean, I think we're still looking to protect the look and feel of Cary also.
Yes.
So
good point.
So I just wanted to mention that.
Other comments?
Yeah, my only other comment that wasn't already mentioned was to reduce the need for a neighborhood meeting. I think anytime we reduce that need, in some cases.
If I can speak to that, I think I can see where that may have been confusing. If you recall, with the previous amendment, we changed the neighborhood meeting process so that it will take place at staff's organization after the submittal. That change was delayed until March. So in putting the amendment together, we had to keep the language in place between now and March for how the neighborhood meetings occur, and then it was added for what happens after March. As we were doing these amendments, we just went ahead and added that cleanup, because by the time this gets adopted, that portion will no longer be in effect, so we just went ahead and went through the cleanup to take that out. So it's not a change.
Could we get some red type that explains all that
Yeah,
for
we need
those
to
that read
explain
it?
that.
Yeah, so we've already added the neighborhood meeting. You're just cleaning up that
We're just cleaning up because we had to maintain the process as it occurs currently between now and March 1st.
Yeah, okay.
So that's why that, and
A little side note would be very helpful.
okay,
to
we'll
explain it
clarify
to
that,
people.
yeah.
And the only other one is with regards to the signs, and it only came up to me because I was wearing my Gail Adcock hat, but it says the proposed amendment would allow use of alternate sign colors on special occasions. Now, I know we have things like, you know, specialty grocery stores. So I just wonder if we want to do some definition, not necessarily of what is a special occasion, because I happen to think my birthday is a special occasion, but, you know, how long is a special occasion?
No, that is a very good catch. That is a very, very good catch.
And in writing the staff report and trying to condense the material and explain it, that's just kind of a general way to say that. If you look in the amendment itself, what the text actually says is that the colors could change, but no more frequently than 8 hours. And it may look a little bit odd in the text, but when we try to apply that, it would prevent any changes from being blinking changes. So a change could change from day to night. The individual colors would all be approved ahead of time. So I think that's, and I can try to find a way to clarify that in just the explanatory language, but in the text itself, it doesn't speak to special occasions. It just gives the standards for when the lights could be changed.
So are we talking, sorry, I was just thinking, this is a permanent sign.
It's a permanent sign that could be, let's say, the standard color of white for the large wall sign. And just as an example of a special occasion, but if, for example, and this would be on a tall building, a large, 5-story building, more predominant building. And if at Christmas, for example, they wanted to have the lights be red to signify some occasion to have that, if that was an approved color, if the shade was such that it was not a high intensity, for example, but it would just provide some flexibility to have some alternate colors that the light could shine, provided that it met all of the color requirements. And there would only be one color for the principal message, the same as is required now, but there would be a palette of approvable colors that it could alternate with some frequency.
I'm just curious what the impetus is for this ordinance. I mean, why are we doing this?
It was raised as a request by business owner, developer, MetLife.
Oh. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, I was just trying to figure out why, and who, because you don't have that many five-story buildings.
So that was where the request came from. In looking at that, and the reason I didn't mention that is because anytime in looking at ordinance amendments, as you know, we try to look at the broader view with that. So in evaluating that request, it seemed like if a building was a very tall and prominent building, then it gives, all buildings of that type and prominence at least some opportunity to do something a little bit different if they're of a different scale.
So I'm going to ask Miss Aesthetic. All right, so if you have a building of a certain color and it's got a sign that was approved as white, and we have a color palette, and then next week it's red, and then the week after that it's green, I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, what it reminds me of is this one summer I lived in New York City, and the buildings would light up for 4th of July, and then the other day it was green, that kind of thing. When I was 19, I thought it was really cool. I don't know. I mean, the thing is that we talked about last night is that you can't really regulate taste, and like if it was done tastefully, maybe that'd be kind of cool. But if it's not done tastefully, well, then we've just opened Pandora's box and we have all kinds of like crazy things going on. And I'm not sure really how critical it is for the well-being of any office owner to do this, that we need to try this. I mean, I don't know. To me, it's just not that interesting.
Yeah, I have to say, one of the things I love about downtown, of the many things, is the fact that on the Cary Theater, they can change the colors. And they've done, during Christmas, they did red and green, it was so cool. On, Hanukkah, it was blue, and thanks again to whoever did that. That was really cool. So I do see the idea of it, where it's done tastefully. I'd like to see what this looks like, and I'm open to it, especially for a company that wants to celebrate something. I was really curious when it said special, was it special occasions? That word special always gets me now with special.
Yeah, I think it needs to be tied down in language, because after our specialty grocery store.
Exactly.
Yeah. I guess, I'm open to hearing more about it. I just don't know if I'm gung-ho about it, and, I may not make the motion for this.
Other comments? Okay, this will go to the Planning and Zoning Board for their review. I'm just curious, are they going to have a work session, or are they going to include this in a regular meeting?
We typically have a work session tentatively scheduled in February, and then it would go to a regular meeting after the work session.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Vera. We now move to discussion items. Our first discussion.
Yes.
Before we go into our discussion items, I have a request to do a 5-minute break, very brief break, so we can refresh ourselves. And we'll be back in 5 minutes.
Thank God. I didn't do it.
We'll reconvene our council meeting. We'll move into our discussion items now. Our first discussion item is item 6.1, rezoning request for Keller property. Staff will present a report. We're going to hear the Planning and Zoning Board's recommendation. There is a protest petition that is filed for this proposal that is valid. This means it will require, I have 5 affirmative votes to approve the request. I'm learning the new numbers since there's only 6 of us instead of 7. 5 out of 6 affirmative votes to approve this request. Council may take action tonight. Ms. Grant.
Thank you. Good evening. This is a request to rezone 2 parcels on Stevens Road, total area of 13.39 acres. Subject property shown here highlighted in yellow.
Thanks, Lori.
Land use plan designation is medium density residential, and then there's a small portion highlighted in green, which is parks and open space. Existing zoning is residential 40. The proposed zoning, residential multifamily conditional use. As you stated, there is still a valid protest petition. The areas highlighted in the purple show parcels that have withdrawn their protest petitions. But the area within that 100-foot buffer is still at approximately 11%, so it still constitutes a valid protest. The current proposed zoning conditions are that the uses be limited to townhomes and neighborhood recreation. That was the same condition you saw at the initial public hearing. They've added a new condition that there be a maximum of 80 dwelling units. When you first saw this, it was 120. So the density's been reduced from 8 dwelling units to 6 dwelling units per acre. The applicants offered a condition to attenuate to the 25-year storm event that exceeds the LDO standards. They've offered a condition that all units shall have a garage and no more than 14 of the units shall be a 1-car garage. They've offered a condition that there be a 40-foot wide type A opaque streetscape provided adjacent to Stevens Road. They've offered a condition that to provide a community gathering space with a minimum of 5,000 contiguous square feet, and that space shall include a playground, play structure, or covered gathering structure. At this time, I'd like to call upon the Planning and Zoning Board Chair to present their recommendation for approval.
Welcome, Ms. Swanstrom.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Seems like I just was talking to you folks.
Less than 24 hours ago.
Less than 24 hours.
A little more than 24 hours.
8:25.
As was indicated in the staff report, we voted 7-1 to recommend approval of this proposal, but that was only after a great deal of discussion, and I think there might be some value in sharing some of that discussion. First of all, we heard from a number of speakers at our public hearing with specific concerns that focused on, first of all, traffic and sub-area construction traffic, the impact of construction on the road. A note that there is no TIA required because, as we know, this doesn't meet the cap, so we don't have a good idea of what the cumulative traffic impact would be. And as you know, Stevens Road is probably not built to a standard to support a great deal of traffic. We heard a concern about a school bus drop-off that's right at the end of the road there. I think probably most of us have been out there now and looked at this one and have a pretty good sense where all this stuff is. Some concerns about stormwater runoff mitigation, and actually this turned in from a negative into a positive because several of the speakers at our public hearing thought that mitigation measures that were proposed were likely to actually improve the current state. But it most certainly would not damage it as our ordinance requires. There was one speaker that talked to us about schools' impact, although there was a discussion about the fact that townhouses tend to have less of a school's impact than single family. There was a positive cited in that there will be additional sewer and water access for some residents. A positive was cited that there will be an increase in property values, potential increase in property values for adjacent properties. It was noted that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan. From a board perspective, we had some questions about Forest Park. You may remember the Forest Park is the road that would connect into Wellington Park. Had some questions about if and when that was going to happen, and the answer was that it'll happen when development on that parcel occurs and not before. There was some concern about the density versus the actual developable acres on this parcel, that there is an area, I guess it's to the northwest corner, that isn't developable, so the density may appear a little higher. But it was noted that it does fit with our comprehensive plan. It is a good transition of uses. It was cited that the developer seems to have made a good effort to try to respond at least to some of the neighbors' concerns, as evidenced by the fact that some of the protest petitions were withdrawn, although all of them were not. And I think that probably summarizes our conversation. It seems like not a lot of words for 45 minutes to an hour of conversation at the board.
You summed it up well. Questions for Mr. Swanstrom? Thank you.
I would just like to add that at the break, number of citizens here in the audience did approach me and did not realize there was not a public hearing and did not understand that the opportunity to speak on this was during Public Speaks Out. A few folks came late, and the meeting started promptly at 6:30, so the folks that came after 6:30, after Public Speaks Out, missed the opportunity to speak on this. So it sounds as though there were some mixed reactions to what was being proposed, both in favor of it and opposition to the request. So the representation on both sides of the fence, a number of people who have spoken already at the initial town council public hearing and at the planning and zoning board public hearing. So there have been opportunities for them to speak, but a few folks said they had additional comments they wanted to make. The applicant also asked me to convey that if it appears that they are not going to get the supermajority vote, they would ask that this be tabled for 2 weeks after they get your feedback and comments to see if there's anything they can do. So just wanted to convey that and then see if you had any questions for me.
Questions, comments?
I have comments. You know, one of the reservations that I've been having lately when I see these townhome communities go up is the lack of community space. So with that offering of 5,000 feet, I'm trying to picture what 5,000 feet looks like, and how big that is. I mean, it might be helpful at some point if one of our staff members could tell us how big this floor is down here, so we could kind of relate it.
So it's 1/8 of an acre, right?
Yeah, 1/8 of an acre. So what does that look like exactly? I mean,
Well, one of the ways I do it, I don't know if it's helpful, is I know how big my house is. So I figure, okay, I'm 3,400 square feet, it's public record. Oh, it's, 1.5 times that.
okay.
So I don't know
All
if
right.
that helps you.
I have some reservation about
Well,
80
split it up.
units with 5,000 square feet of play space. And I've seen it repeatedly where we have these small play spaces for the units, and it's just not, it doesn't really accommodate kids playing. And if you're not, I don't know what the site plan would look like if there's going to be like some kind of cul-de-sac or something for kids to play in, although I'd really rather that they're not in the street playing. They certainly, I just don't know how this really works with where this location is and 80 units in such a tiny play space, especially if they put a shelter over it. Then you're really just talking about a place to kind of like sit around and cause trouble. I mean, it's not like a place where kids can throw a ball or anything like that. It's just a concern of mine. And I think we need to be looking at it as far as addressing it in our LDO, like our standards, what we expect for these tight communities. But I do have some concern about this one.
to follow up, I never even got to that level. I never got over the use proposed. I never saw a compelling use that this needs to be multifamily. There's multifamily to the right. There's gobs of multifamily everywhere around there. That's just not the best use of that land, in my opinion. So I'm hoping that you guys can convince me otherwise, but I'm a strong no on this one, and I can't imagine even tabling this because we're talking about use, not can you make adjustments to the use. So I won't even support tabling it. So it's up to the rest of you if you're going to make this happen, because you're not going to get me to support it.
Well, you could make
Anybody else have
changes.
reservations?
You could make changes to the use. I mean, they could alter a zoning condition.
Well, I would be glad for them to come back and ask for a waiver if they're going to change the use, because that to me is a whole different proposal and should go through the whole process again.
I hear you. My comments would be, if there's not the support here tonight to either pass it or deny it, or folks still feel like maybe there's some opportunity here to make some improvements, whether that's with gathering space or unit count or buffers or whatever the issues may or may not be, then I would at least like to give the applicant the opportunity to see what kind of magic they can work on it and bring it back. And I say that because, initially this had a number of protests on it. And I think the applicant's done some work to address at least some folks' concerns so much that they removed their protest petition. All of them obviously still haven't, and there are still some some concerns out there. So if we weren't, I would at least like to give the applicant the opportunity to work on it for another month or so, and then at that point, if it's still not up to snuff, then we do what we do. But I see some progress has been made. I know there's still some angst out there. I totally get it and understand it. I share your concerns regarding multifamily here. This is already an incredibly busy area of town. So I don't know which way I'm going on it yet, but I don't want to just throw the baby out with the bathwater and, start from scratch when they maybe can work a little magic.
May I ask for a clarification on the use? The zoning is RMF, which is what was originally requested because of the density at 8 dwelling units per acre, but the use is limited to townhomes. So just for clarification for the applicant's sake, is the townhome use what's opposed, or the classification of RMF?
For me, the townhome use is not, I'm not opposed to that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I am not opposed.
And the opposition is to the townhome use?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, do I think it could be a better townhome product? But I'm not opposed to townhomes.
And I agree with Mr. France. I have no problems with townhomes here. I think it's a good transition. I know the applicants reduced the density, still 6 to an acre. I'd like to see it even less than that. I'd like to give the applicant a chance and perhaps if the density were a little less, we might get a larger recreation space also. But as far as townhomes themselves, I have no particular issue with that.
Yeah, and I don't have any major issues. I like the variety of housing stock. We do have a lot of multifamily that'd be the east or north, but
Actually, all around.
all around. But a lot of them are apartments. I mean, I do think it's a nice transition. I also appreciate all the residents who have contacted us on both sides. A lot of longstanding residents, and sometimes it's really interesting to have a longstanding resident who's been there, who wants to stay in their home and say, you know what, I like to have some townhomes near me. I mean, I'd rather have that than some of the other type of product, which is always good to hear. I also like the fact that there is, the 5,000 square feet in one location. One of the things we see sometimes in these townhome products is where they take, a little bit of space all through the townhome area, and it's not really used at all. So I like the idea of pulling that together in one space. I also think about, I think we all do, where we live and how often our green spaces are used. And we have a lot where we live. And it's really not used as much as I think we all would like it to be used. So having 5,000 square feet for 80 homes, we have 718 homes. right? A significant, larger number of homes, and they don't use the space as much as I would like it to. So I like the fact that it's in one centralized area rather than spread out. I think that's a great plan. So I think there's some opportunities for tweaking it, but I'm leaning towards supporting it. I'd like to see this road improved too, and that's a step in that direction as well.
Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I've heard from several, and I think, you know, from the ones that I've heard from, there's, I don't want to say reluctant acceptance, but there's acceptance that a lot of work's been done to improve this. It does meet the comprehensive plan. You know, Jennifer, I think you bring up an interesting point about these pods of playgrounds or whatever, but I think it takes a lot of thought about what it should be, because, you know, my observation is like, well, maybe it's because what you said, Lori, they're so spread out that they're not really used, but I don't envision townhomes to be large groups of, you know, kids that need a big ballpark playing field, but, you know, there is some demographics that's changing that, and I understand that. And I think we need to keep looking at that. But I don't have a real bias on this one about it being too big or too small. You know, frankly, for that size, it felt like it was the right thing to do. In the dream world, you'd like to have in this area, a little bit more detached family, but you know, I felt like a lot of work was done with this, and I've heard from people over there and others that just don't want to see change happen out there. And it has to be more than that. You know, we don't use streets for playgrounds. And, you know, it's hard to fall on the argument that we've lived here 30 years and it's changing. It is, you know, just go up to Piney Plains and go down Raleigh and you got 5,000 of these units or more. So I'm open to this succeeding and would like to give it a chance. Now, if the mood is that we just don't want it, you know, the multifamily.
Sounds like I'm the Lone Ranger on
Well,
that.
my mood is it could be better. I want to see better standards.
Are we giving then, you know, some feedback to the applicant? I mean, what does that mean? It can
Well,
be better?
what I've heard is, I got to count, there's 6 of us. 5 of us say that they're interested in continuing this and allowing it to work a little bit more. And so that's where I think we are. And if so, we would need a motion to table.
I would make a motion to table this until our next regular meeting.
Do we have a date?
February 12th, I believe. Is that, does anybody have a calendar?
I'm just curious.
Yes, yes.
Doesn't have to be part of the motion. So there's a motion.
Second.
And a second. And discussion.
I'll just say that since I made that statement, I think that the density could be brought down some, and I think that it is important to have adequate play space for families. We are finding that this model where people without children move into townhomes is gone. People coming to Cary move into townhomes with children, and we need to be able to create an atmosphere that is pleasing to be in and will be able to sustain the test of time.
And my only comment, not that they need my vote, but if they want my vote, then tell me the compelling reason why, since this is land use plan medium density residential, why it shouldn't be single family residential to be compatible with what's around it rather than multifamily. I don't see the need for multifamily. And there's a lot of multifamily. If you look on the screen, HDR down to the left, HDR to the right. This all around, and I just don't see the reason for it. So,
Yeah, I'd love to see an alternative that was much lower density.
yeah.
At the same time, I think, you know, on your argument, I really think we need to get information from staff, because I thought we did get some information, and the observation that more children are coming down homes was not supported. So I just want the facts. You know, is it or isn't it, you know? Because if it is, and it makes the case that you're making more compelling, but at the same time, I don't want to put brand-new rules when somebody's 3/4, 7/8 of the way through an argument.
I can tell you on that road every morning, there's, below Tryon Road, there's a apartment complex, and I can tell you about a dozen to 24 kids get on. Now, I don't know how many.
Oh, that one. Yeah, I know
That
what you're
one.
talking about.
And then this one,
Yeah.
I think they've got 2 stops on the right side, and there's.
I'm not debating it. I think we just ought to get it resolved in our minds and then fix it.
Yeah,
You know,
but I'm saying there are kids in these multifamily
Yeah,
units.
there are.
And significant numbers of them, but I don't know where they compare.
We used the statistics from Wake County that shows that townhomes typically produce less school-age children than a detached residential. And the numbers change depending on the number of bedrooms, so.
And I totally understand.
And that, yeah, and that cannot be accurate across the whole county. I mean, they're averaging for the whole county, and we know.
Actually, yes, it can be accurate. It's just, I think what you were seeing in Cary is that we're seeing more kids in townhomes than we have before. But compared to single family, they are still less.
Yeah, I guess that could be accurate, but I think the thought is, for a long time, the thought has been townhomes don't have kids.
I think we've always said townhomes have less kids.
There are enough kids for us to wake up and give attention to this matter.
Fair enough.
Especially,
Yeah.
and I don't want to beat this to death, but especially when you're talking about density, if it were single family, in that density, would you have the same number of kids, if that makes sense?
Right.
When you put a lot of density in there and it produces 24 kids, or you have single-family homes that produces 24 kids, yes, per unit is less, but overall, it's the same thing.
Right.
I don't know.
The only color comment I want to make is touching on what Ms. Grandin started off with about a lot of folks came here with the mindset that they would be able to address and speak to us, that when this comes back to our next council meeting, your only opportunity to speak is going to be at Public Speaks Out at the very beginning of the meeting. That happens within 2 minutes of starting this council meeting at 6:30. So if you want to speak, you'll have 3 minutes and you could speak at that time.
And for what it's worth, every single person I've talked to, I've made that very clear. And so, I mean, I didn't talk to everybody, I just talked to a handful.
And Mr.
No, it's just important that people know when they speak.
And Ms. France, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to vote no against the motion to table, but just the fact that it allow people to speak on this because they want to speak on this, I'll support it. Just to give them the opportunity to speak. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
If I haven't heard everything they want to say and they've got more to say, I think it's important that we hear it. So I'll support it. There's a motion to table. Is there any other discussion?
I just have one more comment, and maybe it's more to you, Mayor, than the rest of the
Okay.
folks. I definitely understand how, when you look at that map and you see all the high-density residential and the high number of multifamily that we have.
Actually, you don't see it all, but.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the map, from the map perspective. Yeah, it's there. I think one of the things that this offers, and why I was leaning towards supporting it, would love to hear more from the applicant, is that it's medium density, and it offers that transition and some other housing product, because we're hearing a lot of people who want their families to come live by them, and a lot of millennials who can't afford these single-family houses and don't want to live in an apartment. And it's a nice change and still in the area. So I think for me, it feels like it's the right thing. Whereas if that was an apartment complex with very high density, I'd probably be with you. But I think it's just something to think about.
Still got a long
I
way to
know.
go to convince me. Okay, we have a motion and a second to table till our next meeting, which I think is on February 12th, right? And all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Graham. We now move to item 6.3, discussion item for international rugby event at Wake Med. Ms. Smith will present this item and council may take action.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. For your consideration this evening is a request for funding to host the 2015 North American and Caribbean Rugby Association Men's and Women's Sevens Championship. This event is proposed to be held at Wake Med Soccer Park, June 11th through the 14th, 2015. The Triangle Sports Commission has been coordinating the efforts to bring the event to Cary with USA Rugby, who is the official host of the event. Hill Caro, CEO of the Triangle Sports Commission, is in attendance tonight and is available to answer any questions. Rugby, 7v7, is being included in the Olympics for the first time in the 2016 Rio Olympic Games. And the men's champion and the women's champion from this event will qualify for a spot to compete in the Rio Olympic Games. Up to 12 men's teams and 12 women's teams will compete for the title and the spot in the Olympics. There is no net fiscal impact to the town. Triangle Sports Commission has agreed to reimburse the town for direct expenses, which currently is estimated at $115,000. Capital Broadcasting has agreed to market and promote the event. You have before you a staff report, which includes 2 staff recommendations, the first of which is to approve Wake Med Soccer Park as the host site and authorize the town manager to execute an agreement with Triangle Sports Commission. And the second is to appropriate the $115,000 to cover the costs, which will be fully reimbursed.
Thank you. I think this is a really cool idea. I can't wait to see it. I hope we pass it. It's right before they redo the fields. Whatever they do to the fields, they're going to redo it anyway. So to use the fields to see something I've never seen before, I hope it draws a big crowd. I know I'll be there. I would love to see this. I think it would be fantastic. So I don't know. That's just my 2 cents.
Well, I have to say I'm a huge rugby fan. I went to an engineering school, so I think the mixture of engineering and a game with a ball where people actually do hit each other on purpose with no protective gear.
No deflated balls.
Yeah, no deflated balls, exactly. I think it's a great opportunity for Cary. I will be at every game if we pass this.
Other comments or motions?
Just so everybody's aware, there might be a potential conflict with a Railhawks event.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, good point.
That is correct. Should the Railhawks advance that far in the Hunt Cup, there is a potential that they would have to play one of the matches outside the stadium field because the stadium field would be under the quiet period after the sod was put in. So it takes 21 days after they resod the field before it's ready to play. And one of the Hunt Cup open matches is scheduled during that time period, but they'd have to advance that far and they'd have to be selected as the host, but it is a possibility.
I think that's worth the risk.
It's not going to change my opinion either. I just wanted us all to know and be aware. So if by any chance it happens and we start hearing about it, we knew it on the front end.
Well, let's think positive in that they'll be out there and we'll have both of them.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll make a motion that we approve moving forward on the international rugby event at Wake Med.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
We now move to item 6.4, Community Habitat Partnership with Wells Fargo Grant. Ms. Barrett will present this item and council may take action. Ms. Barrett.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In support of our culture of conservation and environmental stewardship, staff have scoped 2 separate items for your consideration tonight. Both items have in common that they serve to enhance citizen engagement in conservation and sustainability and have recommended April launch dates that dovetail with our Earth Day event, which, as you know, is part of our Spring Days Festival. The first item is a partnership with the National Wildlife Federation called the Certified Community Wildlife Habitat Program. I wanted to give you a bit of background since we have a member of the Environmental Advisory Board in the audience tonight. As part of the EAB's ongoing interest in citizen engagement and conservation, the EAB researched this program and recommended that staff explore the opportunity to participate. The program encourages communities to publicize the Certified Wildlife Habitat Program, which asks participants to commit to 3 easy steps to support wildlife like birds and pollinators. Households, schools, and common areas like homeowners associations can participate and help the Cary team earn national recognition. If approved, staff recommends launching this program in April to coincide with Earth Day, a time when many families are thinking of ways they can help Cary be green and healthy. Staff is recommending participation because many of the outreach ideas suggested by National Wildlife Federation are already being done by the town or are easy to incorporate into our existing outreach methods. There are minimal resources required to participate, and it's a way for the town and its citizens to be recognized for environmental stewardship. I know this is hard to see, but I did want to give some indication that this is a national program with communities all across the nation participating. And I can provide the link at a later date if you'd like me to. This is from their website. The second item is asking for council's approval to pursue competitive grant funding to pilot a Cary Green Neighborhood program for launch in April of 2016. If funded, this program would promote existing conservation programs and connect residents with resources to help them engage in green actions. This proposed program is not unlike the Community Wildlife Habitat Program in that it would provide a suite of green actions that would allow individuals to choose which they would do in the next year to help the neighborhood team earn recognition. The program would aim to direct citizens to existing town conservation programs and to enrich and enliven the conversations, that we're having with citizens currently. In each case, participants will be given more information and resources like web links, local classes, and programs available to help them succeed in their new commitments. A grant-funded part-time staffer will work with volunteers from our existing volunteer programs and elsewhere to promote the program. If awarded, the Wells Fargo Environmental Solutions for Communities grant would provide over $54,000 to the town. The grant does have a one-to-one matching requirement, and the town is allowed to meet this requirement with existing resources, including staff time as well as volunteer time. As a result, no additional town funding will be required to match the grant beyond current budgeted levels. If the grant is awarded and the program proceeds, it will be evaluated at the conclusion of the grant period and presented to council. If council wishes the program to continue, then staff can seek further grant funds to continue the program. Staff recommends that council approve partnering in the Certified Community Wildlife Habitat Program, and staff recommends that council approve pursuing the competitive Wells Fargo Environmental Solutions for Communities grant. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions?
Last night, we heard the goals of our boards and commissions, and one of them being the Environmental Advisory Board, and they act quick, let me tell you, because here we see one of the goals in part being fulfilled with the National Wildlife Federation Habitat Program. I think these things are great. I know as far as that one is concerned, the wildlife habitat, I'm going to participate in that. And if you look at the criteria, I think we have a lot of citizens who are already participating without knowing it. It's a rather simple criteria to meet. I know I'm missing one thing. So I'm going to do it, and I would challenge all of you to look at that too. It would be a great example.
Great to have a lot more time to do it.
Yes. If the council were we're all behind this, that we could
Habitat on the golf course.
maybe set a great example for the town. So I think both of these things are wonderful. It gets some education out there and gets our citizens to participate in some great initiatives.
Other comments?
I mean, I'd be ready to make a motion.
You can go ahead and we'll talk about it.
Can I make a comment first?
Absolutely.
I would like these to be broken up in two separate motions. Okay. The Community Wildlife Habitat Program, I don't really have any qualms about. My concern regarding the second is its reliance on a grant. I love grant funding for tangible capital type projects, because you're actually building something. I don't like grant funding for initiatives because eventually that grant is going to run out. It's not going to get renewed, whether it's a year, 5 years, 10 years, something's going to happen. And then my concern is, does the program stop? Or at that point, are we always committing town dollars towards it? So I can support number one, and for those reasons, I cannot support number two.
Okay. Other questions, comment? Motion?
Well, I'll make a motion for number one, that council approve partnering with the Community Wildlife Habitat Program.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And number two, that the council approve pursuing the competitive Wells Fargo Environmental Solutions for Communities grant.
There's a motion.
Second.
And the second. Further discussion?
I have a question. I mean, do we have any history of not being able to say no once the grant money runs out, or is this just all brave new world for us that we're getting into right now? I don't know if I'm directing that to you,
Mr. Shiver?
Mr. Shiver, or, just from recollection. I mean, you bring up a good point, and the last thing you want is once you get everybody excited and then all of a sudden the well runs dry, then it's like, well, we'll pick up the tab from here. So I was just curious if we had just trying to figure out if there's anything relevant that.
Anything off the top of your head, Mr. Shiver, that you can think of?
No,
Ms. Barrett, do you know?
I think the question about whether we pick up programs that grant funds expire or we don't have that, I think we face that question when it comes up. I think there's benefit to this, and I would support staff's recommendation that we take advantage of it while we can, and we can always evaluate that.
The only thing, and I know it's not related, is some of the water conservation initiatives we had town funding only, but when we appropriated that money and it ran out, we stopped. So that's the only thing I can think is similar.
That's a good idea, yeah. So we can say no. Yeah.
Other comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Nope. Motion carries 5-1. Thank you, Ms. Barrett. Excuse me. We have one more item before I lose my voice. It's item 6.5 for amendment to the town ordinance regarding possession of consumption of beer and wine on town property, streets, and special events. Mr. Boyd, our downtown manager, will present this item. We may take action. Mr. Boyd.
Good evening, Council. Tonight's last item is the amendment to the town ordinance regarding possession and consumption of beer and wine. And to give a little bit of background, the town ordinance, section 22-79, currently prohibits possession and consumption of beer and wine on public streets and sidewalks. It generally prohibits on town property unless in connection with a town-sponsored or approved event. And it may occur during street closure, special events, but only upon approval of a resolution for each event by town council. As we've seen some of our infrastructure improvements along Chatham Street, especially in front of the theater, we see wider sidewalks, which encourages more activity, benches, tables, outdoor dining, and we've even seen requests from neighboring businesses there to have outdoor seating, which they can through an encroachment agreement, but our ordinance wouldn't allow for them for you to eat and then also be able to consume beer and wine from that place at the same time. We've also seen within the past year, council has approved some resolutions for 4 of our special events, 7 O'Clock Rocks, which was a street closure event, and then we also had a beer garden on town property at the Ivy Ellington lawn during the Chatham Street Chowdown and during Lazy Days. So getting feedback and seeing that, we had collaboration between myself, Parks Recreation, Cultural Resources, Cary PD, and our town attorneys to see if there are things that we could amend. In your staff report, there's the amendment is a bit more detailed, but it's generally going over these pieces. First, it adds definitions for terms used in the ordinance, which largely come from the North Carolina ABC laws. It does amend the ordinance to allow the possession and consumption of beer and wine in outdoor dining areas on town right-of-way or other property for which proper encroachment permits have been obtained. We do take exception during Lazy Days, given the volume of people on the streets. We don't want to add to that clutter that could be happening during that. The amendment clarifies that the possession and consumption of beer and wine are permitted at town facilities such as the Cary Arts Center, at the Cary Theater, and at lease facilities such as the Jones House, and it gives further explanation on how that would be provided. And then also it allows for beer and wine to be consumed on public streets that have been closed to traffic at special events in the Town Center Zoning District, or the TCAP area, without separate resolution of council, provided the following. It is a town-sponsored or co-sponsored event The town has made beer and wine available for purchase pursuant to appropriate ABC permits, and that a council resolution is still required for such events held outside of the town center area. It also clarifies that the ordinance does not apply to occupants of motor vehicles, and that's because the state's traffic laws cover this topic, and local governments are not permitted to further regulate. In terms of fiscal impact, there's minimal costs that would be associated during special events, but we believe that could be recouped easily through vendor fees or through the event producer, make it their responsibility, and that there are no costs associated with the related outdoor dining areas. And staff recommends council approve the amended town ordinance, section 22-79, regarding the possession and consumption of beer and wine on public streets associated with outdoor dining on town property and during special events. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions, comments, or motion?
Make a motion to approve staff recommendation.
There's a motion
A second.
and a second.
I'll
Discussion.
drink to that.
Okay.
You've been
I'm
thinking
getting
about
ready
that
to.
all council meeting. You've been waiting the
comments?
entire meeting for that.
to him.
Other comments or questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
Thank you.
That completes our agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.